Thank you. Let the record show that we have a quorum present. All members are present. Report from closed session. Mr. Hirsch, do we have anything to report?
I don't believe there's anything to report.
Thank you. Special reports. Sheriff's Department, Commander DeForest. That was quick.
That was quick. Good afternoon. The Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center received 266 calls for service between last month's meeting and today. Of those calls, 51 of them were EMS calls. 10 of them generated a crime report or an arrest. There was one 5150 or mental health evaluation incident, 13 incident reports or field interviews, and 26 traffic stops. Of those that generated a crime report or an arrest, there was a sexual assault that actually, well, a sexual assault that's still being investigated, a trespass, a burglary, 2 resisting a peace officer incidents, 2 petty theft incidents, a fraud incident, a threats incident, and a driving without a license citation. And that's what we had for last month.
Thank you, Commander. Any questions for the Commander? None? Appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a report from the Fire Department. Captain Gibson.
Mr. President, members of the board, good afternoon. And I am representing Chief Miller on behalf of the Fire Department and giving his report. First off, I'll just go down just some of our stats for the month of February. And for the prevention and education area, we've got 2 residential new and remodel fire plan reviews that were completed. 5 residential and commercial technical fire inspections were conducted as well. We have not currently done any hydrant system flow tests yet. Part of that's due because of the water issues that we face, and also because of staffing reasons as well. We are hoping to bring in some reserves to augment testing hydrants, or at least maintaining them, making sure they're lubricated and that they have locators at the street level for easy identification in cases of emergency. We have completed 15 engine business inspections in the commercial district areas for fire and life safety issues. And we've also completed 8 residential smoke detector installations and or battery exchanges, which we provide to the community free of charge. And then we've also completed or have conducted 2 public events, of which one of them was at least the Cal Poly is doing a CAF study, and they came by the station and we assisted them with some of their information gathering and furthering their exploits in the nationwide study that they're doing for compressed air foam systems. And then some meetings and other affiliations that occurred during the month of February for Chief Miller. He attended the SLO County Chiefs Association meeting on February 6th. He was also in with the Mutual Aid Communications meeting as well, which was held down in the Los Osos training facility. And he was also in our strategic planning meeting for our department. That was held up at San Simeon, and that was on February 7th. And then he also had a community, or the Cambria Community Healthcare District meet and confer meeting. That was on February 13th. And there was also a shared services stakeholder meeting that had a really good turnout on February 25th as well. And then there's also the healthcare board meeting that was held on February 26th that he attended as well. On an operational level, the fire department and ambulance staff are working in conjunction with a coalition formed by the Coast Unified School District in efforts to direct prevention measures, mitigation measures towards student safety. And in light of the incidences at Sandy Hook and Taft, We felt it imperative, as well as I'm sure other jurisdictions and agencies have found it imperative and needed to provide certain measures to keep our students safe, our teachers safe, and the like. Essentially, what it's geared toward, the coalition, is for basically improvements structurally to school grounds and facilities, implementing updated and/or appropriate policies and procedures, and also to help school faculty to interface with emergency responders as well. And I believe that there is a meeting and/or retreat scheduled for school faculty members to go over those items in particular and actually get the ball rolling. But it's an active process that they've been working with local law enforcement as well. Also, there's some training opportunities that are coming up in the near future. The National Fire Academy, Bob Gressens and Chief Miller will be attending. It's basically a large disaster drill and training session, and that's going to be in April from the 7th through the 11th. It's geared towards tsunami type incidences that could possibly impact the Central Coast. So it's going to be geared towards that. It's a grant-funded educational opportunity, so there's no cost to the community of Cambria, and it's through the 5 Cities Fire Authority, specifically Dave Matthey, who wrote the grant, is managing it. So great opportunity. Again, it's not going to be a cost issue for the community, and it will also encompass, or will also have participation from other agencies within our county as well. So that way there's a better utilization of resources and interfacing. There's also currently Chief Miller, and the reason why he's not here, he's down in San Diego going through a workshop. It's basically, as far as I know, it's geared towards the retention of reserve and volunteer personnel for emergency services, and with the difficulties both locally, nationally, and globally to maintain staffing as far as volunteers go, it becomes more and more difficult. They're trying to come up with ideas and programs to nurture and foster volunteer programs that would be a little more sustainable than what they are currently. So Chief Miller's down there. It'll be today, Friday, and I think Saturday. So a 3-day course, and he's hoping to bring back some information there that we can use to help augment our services here with volunteers and reserves. That also is a grant-funded training opportunity as well. So once again, that's not a fiscal impact on local Cambrians. We also have an update on another training session that took place last week. It was a Command 2E class that was attended by Captain Hollingsworth, Engineer Gibson, Engineer Torlano, and myself. And it was a Command 2E course that was held up in Monterey Seaside area. And the focus on that was basically large wildland type incidences, how to manage it, lots of tabletop exercises, and kind of getting a realistic idea of what we can and can't do with our situation being isolated and limited resources. So it was really good eye-opener for all of us, and we're really looking forward to being able to put in some preventative measures from what we've learned and to help us be prepared for the what-ifs or just in case something like that may occur. We also have, Chief just wanted me to make a note about the possibility of the consolidation with the healthcare district, and that, as far as I know, that they're in the process of working up a GAPA through some legal services, and didn't give me too many details on that, but it's still in the process, and hopefully we can move forward in getting that accomplished sooner rather than later. On the consent agenda, there was an item concerning essentially shared services between our reserves.
Excuse me, Captain, why don't, if there are any questions, we'll get to that, but
Oh, okay.
let's see if the directors have any questions for the captain.
I do.
Dr. Robinette?
Yes, just a couple. First of all, thank you for the very comprehensive report.
You're welcome.
But back to the emergency training that you're going to provide for teachers
Yes.
here in the district on the emergency training. What grade levels will you include?
I don't know on that one. I would imagine it would be comprehensive from any of the Coast Unified School District campuses, so I would imagine.
K-12?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I did not get any details on that, but that's my guess.
Okay, and are there any projected timelines of when you'll be providing that?
Well, there is a meeting scheduled, I believe, in April, as far as moving towards kind of a final product that has certain policies and procedures in place, and if there needs to be changes or enhancements to any of the school facilities for their safety. As far as a drop-dead date, none was indicated.
Okay, I'm more interested in the staff development side, the training side, so maybe we can, when you know when those dates would be, maybe have an update at another time.
Okay, well, the training side is going to be in April, held at
Oh,
Camp
okay.
Ocean Pines. There was not an exact date for that, but it's April. I don't know. I was just told in April.
Okay, good.
So there is going to be a training session in April.
Right, so it's coming up.
Yes.
Okay, and then just one other thing on the tsunami training that you have the grant to go and attend.
Uh-huh.
Will you, as a follow-up, maybe a next step, will you do public outreach, public education, that type of thing for people that are interested here?
I would believe so. As far as I know, it's geared towards administrative level personnel and how they would manage the incidents. That's why Chief Miller is going, and most agencies or jurisdictions from our county, it's mainly administrators and chief officers who are going. How they plan to implement that with the use of community personnel, such as like a CERT team and or members at large, that I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Clift?
Yes, you talked about hydrant tests
Yes.
and the obvious problem of you open a hydrant and water running down the
Right.
street, we all get a phone
Right.
call.
Correct.
Is there, and there's the need to, of course, have those tested
Correct.
at the same time. Is there a way for you to capture that water into a tanker or something and use it as we use for other water uses?
I'm sure that we could
I mean,
engineer. We currently don't have anything engineered like that to capture the water.
Does the school district have something like that we might?
Yes, they do.
In other words, I'm just thinking that, the hydrant tests are important,
Correct.
but conservation of water too, and if we can do it as a double duty, I would hope we can cooperate somewhere across and get that done that way.
Sure. Absolutely.
Anyone else? No. All right, thank you, Captain. And if you would just stand by until we get to that item, I'd appreciate it, and see if we have
Mr.
any
President, I think that I will comment. I noticed the captain did talk about the operational agreement and consolidation of reserve personnel. He mentioned that, and any objections or any considerations I have for that consent agenda item are no longer existent.
Okay. And we're good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, moving along, we have no acknowledgements or presentations, so we'll go to public comment. I have one request, two requests. For public comment on items that are within the jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. If we could keep it on that specific item and keep it within 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. So the first one we have is Mary Webb.
Good morning, President Thompson and the board. I have asked for this before in just in public comment in general, but I've now made it, I've actually printed out a copy of what I'm talking about, of what I would like to see at the CCSD website as far as transparency on what the customer billing records are and how much water we're using per customer class. And this is just a really easy way to do it in Excel, where you put in the dates of the billing cycles, and then you put in the amount of water used by residential, multifamily, commercial, the internal accounts, the vacation rentals, the total usage of water in acre feet, and then there's a percentage at the end of how much water is being used by those categories. And as I have the formulas, I have the Excel spreadsheet, the calculations are already done, and I'd be happy to provide that to your staff. But it would just be really helpful to those of us who are, instead of asking for public records requests and doing this on our own, that this could just be a page somewhere on the CCSD website that could be done at per billing cycle, so that we'd look up there in April and we could see January, February, March, April, and so on until the end of the year. And then keep several years in a row so that we can track what the increases or decreases in water are by customer class. So that'd be great if we could see something like that. And like I said, I'd be happy to provide those formulas and calculations to the staff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. We'll give this to the general manager for his consideration. Next, we have Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, President Thompson. Tina Dickinson, Cambria. While Captain Gibson is still here, it was brought to my attention by a couple who walk the ranch regularly that there were about 50 bottle rockets around a bench on the Fiscalini Ranch. And it's as you're going from Seacliff Estates, going south, the bench right before you make the turn, before you make that sharp turn to Marine Terrace, they notified, I believe, the president of the, Joyce Renshaw. And then my husband walked the ranch. A little later, I walked the ranch. It had been cleaned up, but I found evidence, and I forgot to bring it with me, of bottle rocket, whatever it is. So anyway, I wanted, apparently the fire department was not aware of this, and it is not in the ranch manager's report. So just want to make you aware there were about 50 of them, apparently, according to them, and I do have some of them. The second thing is I learned from an email from our general manager, Mr. Gruber, that Jim Adams has resigned, and in the email at the end of it, Mr. Gruber said you might want to extend your good wishes or whatever to Jim. So I see that Jim is not here, but I would like to extend my very best wishes to Jim. Under these rather mysterious circumstances, I have to say.
Tina, he retired, not resigned.
Oh, really? Well, that wasn't made clear. And I'm sorry that he isn't here to personally receive recognition from staff, board, and the community, which is most unusual. No matter whether Mr. Adams is here or not, well reports should be always something that are included in the packet every single month. It doesn't matter which employee is left. That is critical and it's crucial. It's what you're all about. And I would say that this community expects nothing less than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. That concludes public comment. Is this under public comment or under 9A, Jeff? If it's on something that's not on the agenda, then would you step forward, please? Oh, okay. All right, well. Yes, sir.
Jeff Hillman, my comment is, I made some comments a couple of months ago about corporations and issuing meters to corporations and enriching the corporation. I kind of wanted to clarify it because it looked like it turned out in the paper anyway that, Mr. Grunge is against affordable housing. Mr. Grunge is not against affordable housing. Mr. Grunge votes liberal progressive typically. Here's the deal. I got an annual report from one of the, from the people wanting to do the apartment self-help. And what I found was they're a California corporation, and they call themselves nonprofit, but what I did find out is the executives took out over $3 million worth of salaries in 2011. I don't know if there's half a dozen of them. I really don't know how many there are. But if what I'm surmising is true, that means that the people that run that organization are in the top 1% of the population in income. So they made the 1%. You can use a corporation's guys to get, and PR, to have people fall all over you, because if you say it's for self-help, if you say we're giving affordable housing, that's kind of cool. Everybody likes that. But when the prices of the eventual apartments are about market rate, maybe slightly less, when you pay $900 or $1,000 for an apartment, you know, who's getting a benefit here? It seems like just the executives of the organization that are doing this. But I understand the PR power of saying you're for the small guy, you're for affordable housing, and you're a nonprofit. It gives you access to government subsidized loans and all of that. So I just suggest being careful. And the same thing with that project for the older home. What was it, Kingston Bay? This is like a major real estate corporation. So when you guys give them all these meters and you get them to cut in front of the people that have been waiting for like 10, 20 years to get a meter, I think you're doing those people and the town a real disservice. And I would just suggest that, I mean, like I got a water shower and I'm thinking, what am I getting a water shower for when the value that I'm giving, the points that are issued because of this, go into making a corporation a little richer with executives that are bringing down the buku bucks? I would just ask the board to scrutinize what they're doing and don't just assume at face value that everything that's presented to you is, you know, like totally egalitarian and altruistic. I don't think that's the case. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Okay, moving to item 5, agenda review, additions, deletions, and pull consent items. Any items on the consent agenda that directors wish to pull? All right. Then we go to item number 6, managers and board report. General Manager Gruber.
Thank you, President Thompson and board members. Just a few items. With regards to the work that Chief Miller's doing, working with the school district, he was asked by Chris Adams, the school board superintendent, to be on a task force, and he is part of that task force. And it's just another example of us working collaboratively with the school district. And so when that meeting occurs in April, we'll make sure that the board and the community is briefed on what's transpired and the work that the district is doing with the school district. The weed abatement process is going to be starting pretty soon too, so I just thought I'd put that in there. That's always a fun time for everybody in the community. So the weed abatement, April, May-ish, just depends on if we get any more rains or not. So staff at the administrative level working with Chief Miller is moving that process forward. Again, it's already time. Jim Adams did announce his retirement. I shared that with the board and with the media. Jim has requested to not be recognized at the board meeting, and so I want to respect that, but I also want to thank him for his service and the work that he did for the district, and wish him sincere luck in the next chapter of his life. I think it's something that we all look forward to. So we did have a contractor that broke a valve on Moonstone Beach. And we are seeking restitution for that valve. We have turned in, working with the Sheriff's Department, but we're also working with our district council and our insurance company. I can't emphasize enough that a public water and wastewater system, people are not arbitrarily allowed to touch valves. And this particular valve was the effluent valve that left the wastewater treatment plant. And so essentially we could not pump anything from the wastewater treatment plant to the spray fields. But it was a really good exercise for Bob and I and the water and wastewater and admin staff. Everybody worked together, facilities and resources, and we were able to get the valve open. We still have to go back in next week on the 26th and dig the road back up and replace it. That's about $12,500. And there's going to be there's been an additional staff time and additional work that's going to be required on that day. So we're probably looking at about $25,000, and it's my intention to have somebody other than the CCSD pay for it. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. Going to my general manager's report, I'll just touch on some key things, and I would like Bob to do the district engineer report, if that's okay with the board president, because the board did ask us for several things that were not included last board meeting, and he has included those. So I'll just go through my general manager's report and some of the staff reports. We continue to move the water conservation program forward. First thing on my item, district engineers working with RBF engineering. We have actually a timeline. I'll let Bob discuss that a little bit. For having the rodeo grounds and the Stewart Street tank bid process and the diagrams and specs done with that, hopefully in early fall. And again, when we reduce that fire flow down to 1,500 gallons, there's anticipated several $100,000 savings in the design and build of that station. APT Waters concluded about 20% of their grease and oil, fats, oils, and grease inspections. It's gone rather well. We've only found one facility that was in really bad shape. The community's worked really well with us, and so they still have about 80% of the inspections to do. They've completed 25 of them, and the restaurant owners and the business owners have been very, very cooperative with APT and with staff. The Main Street Bridge project is coming before 2013, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months or so. The CCSD's role in that is that the county has asked us to enter into an agreement with them. They need to mitigate some of the stream bank as far as the restoration process, and I'll be bringing a resolution to the board in April. It'll be no cost to the CCSD. It's essentially just asking them to gain access to our property and allowing them to mitigate through plantings some of the stream banks. We anticipate the SR4 well being up and running by April 1st. The process is taking us a little bit longer than we anticipated. There is some programming work that is ongoing relating to the PLC, but when the well is back online, it'll be fully automated. And there's some key components that are important to note. It's the pressure filter differential switch, the turbidity, the chlorine, and all the valves will be fully automated with the call-out capability. So there's a lot of work going into that, and then as part of next year's budget process, what we want to do is we want to eliminate the reclaim tanks and just have the effluent from the backwater wash at the SR4 go directly into the sewer system. So we're going to put the design of that into next year's budget. On page 8, we have $4,737,561 in LAIF. On page 10, as of February 28th, it shows our fund balance, our 5-year scheduled investment and the balance for February of 28th, which is $4.8 million. Again, I've touched on the things that Chief Miller, that Captain Gibson talked about, and Chief Miller's reports on page 12. Just bear with me here, and we'll get through all these staff reports. The district engineer, again, if it's okay, I want him to comment on a couple things that he's working on, including on page 16. We were asked by one of the directors last board meeting to come up with the information relating to how the wait list process works. I'm not an engineer, so I thought, well, we'll write it out for you. And Bob graphed it out for you, so it did a really good job on that. I'll let him touch on that. On page 18 is the timeline for RBF and the rodeo grounds. I did indicate that our water supervisor had retired. Mike Finnegan was our lead wastewater operator. On a temporary basis, it's important to note that I can appoint people on a temporary basis, but really the decision comes up to the board. And so I plan on bringing that back. So what Mike did as the interim utility manager, temporary utility manager, is he covered the activities that he's doing in wastewater, water, collection system operations and maintenance, laboratory, effluent spray field, and the meetings he attended. On page 21 is the Administrative Services Office, is a Facilities and Resources Manager's report. He covers the Fiscalini Ranch, the skate park, work he's done in the public restrooms, the Vets Hall, and then the streetlights. And he actually included pictures. What I'd like to do, are we up for I'm going to talk to APT, are we up for showing the video or the slides of the work that we've done on the infrastructure for wastewater? Is that ready to go? Did that get to you by any chance? Okay, so we won't do that. What I wanted to do this month is I wanted to spend a couple minutes on going over all the repairs that the wastewater department has done over the last year. So I'll just incorporate them all next month. I wanted to do wastewater this month, and then April I wanted to do facilities and resources, and then May I wanted to do water. We've included quite a few pictures of work that's been done. Carlos included these from his department. I really wanted to include the wastewater work that's been done. So there's a little snafu here, so we'll include that next month. Page 31 is the administrative officer's report. And one of the things, again, that was asked last month of us is the retrofit points bank. We wanted some information about that. And as you can see, we have 3,229 points in our points bank. Sorry about the wastewater presentation, but with that, I'll answer any board questions that you may have about any of these staff reports, and if it's okay with the board, just have Bob briefly comment on his engineering report.
Okay, Jerry, before we bring it back to the board, we have 2 requests for public comment. First one, Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
It's a question in regard to Bob's presentation. Yes.
Oh, okay, I see, okay.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so at your
Jumping the
pleasure,
gun.
do you want me to talk about?
If you would.
I'll just
Yeah,
briefly
maybe.
summarize, and if there's questions, just feel free to stop me. The non-CIP work tasks I list, and briefly, attendance of the March 6th Water Resource Advisory Committee meeting with the county. There was also the emergency repair that Jerry referred to earlier on March 8th, where the valve had closed and had broken in a closed position, so it was one of those stop everything, let's get this thing open, and so we can let our effluent go to the perk ponds where it belonged. So that was quite an emergency at that point in time. So we were all assisting operating staff. The other non-CIP activity was the continued assistance on water conservation program and related permits. There was further coordination with the connection fee consultant Bartle Wells, and I had many good meetings with both Jim Adams and Mike Finnegan on what is needed by the water and wastewater department. So that information has been forwarded along to the rate consultant. We'll have more discussions, I'm sure, with the different ad hoc committees as this thing progresses along. There's 2 attachments related to your questions from the last board meeting on February 28th. And I apologize for not having an overhead on this, but the first illustration is very detailed and just schematically represents how we review new projects or new service connections and what process they generally go through. And this can vary quite a bit, particularly the county steps that are just in summary form there. So I have a qualifying note at the bottom that you'll see if you really need to talk to the county planning and building department to get their detailed process, because each project can differ. But essentially where the drawings are checked, it happens at a couple of points. Usually when someone submits to get an intent to serve letter, they do provide some information on their project at that point in time. And then there's another point where we have what we call a demand offset letter, where we require more detailed information on a project. And these go in parallel with the process that say the homeowner might be following with the county to get a building permit. And they go through typically a minor use permit where they're developing more details on their drawings. And finally, their last step is to get a building permit from the county where they have much more detailed level of drawings. So you'll see in the lower left corner of that illustration, I have CCSD compares final plans submitted to county with intent to serve submittal and demand offset submittal project information. So that's a critical step in checking the drawings at that point in time before we issue the final invoice for a connection fee. So the connection fee would really be the catch there in that process. So if something really changed drastically from what we were told earlier on to the point where the project was actually being approved by the county, we'd make adjustments at that point in time too. So there's several areas in this chart that address the question you had on how drawings are looked at during the development process. So I can get into more details if you wish on that illustration, but I'll move along unless there are questions. The other question that was raised was on the Stewart Street tank. Oh, I'm sorry, before I leave that particular subject, I did also show an example demand offset approval letter conditions. There may be more specific conditions beyond what I show on this. This just shows on item 4 how we pin it down to say any subsequent changes to this design. First of all, we specify which drawings we're looking at by whoever designed it and the date. And then if there are subsequent changes in design, which may add fixture units or add square footage or change the intended use, they shall, resubmit for additional review for us to assess the accuracy of what we charged them for the in lieu fees or whatever we are doing at that point in time. And then they have to bear any additional staff time to review those changes. So that was the purpose of that particular attachment to the staff report, just to give you a little window to what we do at a staff level on that particular concern. The other item attached here is the bar chart or Gantt chart for the Stewart Street Tank 3 project and Rotary Grounds Pump Station Replacement project. And this was updated just between Paul Klein of RBF, who's the project manager with them, and myself, looking at where we were at. We've had a few questions that aren't really contributing a lot of delay to the project, but could result in some cost savings. We found between the change that occurred to our fire flow criteria a few months ago, I think that was back maybe in last fall, where we have a fire flow of about 1,500 gallons per minute for residential and about 2,500 for commercial. Well, the Rotary Grounds Pump Station serves primarily residential areas. There are only maybe 2 properties in that slightly higher zone that could be looked at as viewed as a commercial property with the higher fire flow of around 2,500. So that if those 2 could be addressed somehow to put in fire sprinklers or be notified that they have to do something, we might get further savings on those projects of about $300,000 to $500,000. So that's a big point that we're still exploring with the fire chief before we go much further on the design. Then once we get past that step, there'd be some updated conceptual drawings that'd be wrapped into a coastal development permit application with the county building and planning department. So that's right where we're at, and the estimate right now, and it's based on, of course, there being funding, would be to construct the project or have it ready to go around the end of November of this year, and then you'd have probably roughly a 10-month construction period on that, or a 12-month construction period on those 2 projects. So that addresses the question that came up on those 2 projects. Unless there's more follow-up questions, I'd be glad to elaborate further. And then lastly, I just make mention that Jerry Gruber and I had a good meeting with the city of San Luis Obispo on the Whale Rock potential for a long-term water supply project. I think there was past concerns, not at last board meeting, perhaps earlier ones, about how much communication has been occurring with the Whale Rock alternative with the powers that be on that particular facility. And I thought it was a very good meeting. We met with their city utilities director, Carrie Mattingly, and also their water division manager, Wade Horton. And we just shared what was happening to date, and with the thought that we would make an outreach to the Whale Rock Commission at one of their future board meetings. So that still has to be determined. And then lastly, the information on the Army Corps we've been pushing for. We did have a good conference call with them on the 13th of this month, and the result of that is they are going to attend our next board meeting via the WebEx connection that we have and elaborate further on where they're at on the EIR, EIS process, and bring you and the community up to speed on that project. We just didn't have much to report on for this particular agenda at this time. So that's how that was final in response to that concern. So with that being said, I'd be glad to answer any detailed questions you may have.
Okay, let's take the public comment first, then we'll bring it back to the board. Ms. Bettenhausen?
Thank you very much, President Thompson. I have a question first about page 16, the big graph about new service connection process. And it's unfortunate that the people in the audience can't see that, because I think many of them are interested in precisely that process. I would like to ask the question way at the top. The very first dark black bold arrow says, it points to inquiry letter to property owner. My question is, who initiates this letter? Who writes and sends this letter? And for what purpose is the inquiry made? So who's responsible for it and what is it? That's my question. I then want to look at page 15, which Mr. Greshams just referred to, and I want to point out at the bottom a concern that I have. And that is that if you recall, and it would be very, very hard to get it out of our memories, last year there were 4 workshops, and many of the workshops used high-tech connections, and some people commented and some didn't. I recall board members asking last year, whose idea were these workshops? And I think the idea of the workshops were from staff. I have yet to understand why the board thinks unproductive workshops, which is what you called them, should be continued under the guise of staff decisions or high tech. Do we need to hear from the Army Corps of Engineers on these marvelous computer connections? Or do you as a board, are you as a board interested in more information than that is likely to give you on the spot at your next meeting? I refer you finally, board, to my email to Mr. Gruber and to you, because I want to highlight one element of my email about the resignation of Mr. Adams, which I thought was very unexpected. And I delight in surprises often when I find them on the beach. But I do not delight in surprises that have to do with the hierarchy of the staff, on which I've served in different staffs, or with the board in which I've made decisions. And my point in that email that I want to highlight now for many people who did not receive it, of course, I quote, "I hope the CCSD Board of Directors will address the policy matters implicit in your decisions about staff this time," namely in April, when the general manager brings you these decisions. "You often say that the board sets policy," Mr. Gruber, that wrote it to him, "and the staff implements them." And there's considerable agreement about that. However, it is also the case, one sentence, sir, it is also the case that management decisions in and of themselves entail policy implications, not necessarily explicitly stated in the staff decisions. We saw this last year in abundance, and we're continuing to see it now. I would like explicit consideration of policy. When it's implicit, I would like explicit consideration by the board. It is my right as a citizen to have you honor your elected responsibilities in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen. Next, we have Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. It has become frustrating to me when I look at the general manager's report that he has attended many meetings, all of which are bullet pointed and listed, and yet there is no reporting from any of the meetings that he's having with, for example, RAC, or with the Board of Supervisors or the Chamber of Commerce. And these meetings, some of them I have attended when he's been there, some I've watched with live streaming, but they are significantly important to what is happening. on in the agenda today, but as we go forth. And to not have any reporting is to me unconscionable. Mr. Greshams, you just actually helped me segue into this because you said that you had met with folks from the city of San Luis Obispo, and you reported on that. And so today, for the public, for Cambrians, for ratepayers, I would like to submit for the record from the Board of Supervisors the action that was taken last Tuesday, March 12th, at the Board of Supervisors meeting, agenda item number 13, on the RMS, the Resource Management System, where Mr. Cliff spoke for the CCSD, not the GM, but Mr. Cliff, Director Cliff, asking for the RMS to be lowered, and it was denied. So what I'd like to submit for the public record is the motion, the second, and the action that was taken, which was a 5-0 on that, so that folks in this town get to know what's going on, because we're certainly not finding out from these reports. It looks great, all these wonderful meetings you're attending. I'd like to know what's going on. When you've gone to a meeting, I would like to know, as a ratepayer and a constituent, what you are learning. And to me, this was very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. We have one more public comment under item 6A. Mary Webb.
Mary Webb, Cambria. I think Tina actually just covered some of the things I was going to say. So one of the issues I think now that we're being faced with as citizens is that the general manager's report is including so many of the, it's one part of the agenda that includes 5 different staff member reports. So we now, as a community, only have 3 minutes to comment on Bob Gresson's report and the general manager's report, things like the meetings that are happening, the conservation programs, the wait list, the Army Corps engineering project, the rodeo grounds pump station, the CIPs, Whale Rock meetings. I mean, we're only getting 3 minutes to comment when there are probably, hours of conversations to be had on each of those lines. So I would request in the future that we start to separate the general manager's report into separate items, especially where it has to do with CIPs, with Bob Gresson's report, what's going on with the Army Corps, so that the community has more time to actually comment on those things. I, too, would like to have results of meetings specifically stated at this meeting, like when they went to the RAC, that changing of level of severity 3 was denied. That was not presented today in Bob's report and should have been. The wait list, the way this wait list cycle just seems to continue forever and ever. There's no chart in here that shows, does anyone ever fall off the wait list? Can they continue to say they don't want to build, which has happened in the past? This wait list has come up 3 times before where people have said they didn't want to build, so they got put back on the wait list on the same position number when the community has the idea that they were never given the opportunity to build. So there should be something in there that says that when you say no, you don't want to build, that's it. You're off the wait list, or you can't keep deferring. You can't defer for 12 more months, 18 more months, so that this thing just continues on forever. And we've never really had a conversation about that in the community, about how this particular cycle, should be, how this program should work. The connection fees, I'd like to know, what is the connection fee now for new connections? Is it $50,000? Someone said it was something like that, but is there a report now that shows exactly what these connection fees are going to be and how they're split out, how much of it is going to cover build-out reduction? The Army Corps report I find completely really frustrating. There's actually no information now after 1 year of what's going on with the Army Corps in our long-term water supply project. When Mr. Gressons just says it's another 30 days, we're going to hear for another 30 days. He's been saying another 30 days for a year. So what is going on with our long-term water supply project? We need information on that, and I don't see it anywhere in the agenda. The same day that we're talking about opening intent to serve letters to add more growth, we do not have any meeting even scheduled with the Army Corps right now on a long-term water supply analysis of the 3 choices, much less a project. We haven't even decided which project. We don't even have an analysis of the 3 yet. So there goes 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, this last thing was on the conservation. I got this shower head a couple of months ago, and I do want to conserve, and I do want to install it, but it's not going to fit on my shower, you know, for whatever reason. It's my husband says the plumbing thing's kind of weird, and we might have to get a plumber to do it. So is this, have I been given retrofit points in the retrofit bank for someone else to build based on this thing that's sitting in this bag? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. I assume that some of these questions will be answered during the course of our discussion with the board, so I'll bring it back to the board. And Director Rice, you had the floor.
Thank you. Referring to the new service connection process, I'm one of the people who is interested in that process, not necessarily the county part of it, but you can't go forward on a project until you have your application is complete, and you can't have a complete application without a letter from the district. Does that also include it's not complete unless there's a demand offset letter?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And if it's all right, President Thompson, on when you review the final plans, do you review the final actual residents, or do you just review the final plans? I mean, I know the county goes through and does a final, and if you look at the plans and the plans have changed, do we have traction to get them to add additional, that they have to do additional retrofits, not just in Luffy's, but, you know, save additional water?
Well, I think our lever is that we wouldn't issue connection fees and we'd stop the project if we found it was different from what we were led to believe earlier on when there were fees paid for some of the retrofit points, for example. So that would be our lever at that point. Now, I'm not sure I remembered your first part of your question as well as I should have. So if you could repeat that all.
Do we actually check the final building, the final residence, the way the county does a final inspection before they sign off that the project is completed? Do we do that, or do we just check the final plans of the project?
We do an inspection with the water department. Has been doing inspections of the premises. That's part of before they'd put the meter in. The plans would be checked, but not all the plans. There's a great level of detail provided the county doesn't pertain to us on the building
Absolutely.
construction, but we basically look at the floor plans, where the fixtures are at, bathrooms, some of the basics on what pertains to water, and not necessarily the rest of the details that are submitted to the county.
Absolutely, I wouldn't expect that you would have to do anything but on the water. I'm just want to make sure that we have a process that ensures that the amount of retrofitting that was required for a project to go forward is actually what ends up being the amount of water that we're projecting that they may demand for that house, whether number of fixtures, however you do that calculation, is actually the amount of water that probably will be used by that house, and that we have offset that actual, that's what I'm trying to make sure our process is ensuring, that we're actually making sure there isn't additional water used.
Yeah. And that's why that box is in that lower left corner ahead of connection fee payment, so that we would have that final check and to make sure that things didn't change substantially. So we may have underestimated, say, for example, the water savings requirement. So.
Got it. And the one last quick question, I know it would probably require an additional staff person, but do we ever look at the bills for those new, I know we've only had a couple of new ones in the past 10, 12 years, but do we ever look and see if we actually were close to what we projected that residents would use?
That I don't think we do right now. We do have alerts that if someone's using excess water, you know, we get flagged on that. We can, you know, send out a water operator to inspect. But as far as that specific of a detail where you actually go in and start checking water use after a new facility is occupied, typically not.
It would be nice to know if our estimates were close to what is actually happening in the field.
But that is some of the work that Madaus Water Management has done and is still working on at this point in time. So, you know.
Director Behringer?
Yes, by the way, I really appreciate this chart, and I know it's in my packet. I think that anybody that's on the list should, you know, if we do issue an inquiry letter, they should include this. It's really very enlightening, and I appreciate it. And I wonder if there's institutional knowledge that shows that we've gone through the list completely 2 or 3 times. I do think that it's clear, or history tells us, that it has gone through the entire list once, and no one took a letter. That's the rumor. But I wonder if anybody else knows that it has actually gone through completely more than once. I believe it's only one time. And I believe in 2004, the code was changed that if you receive a letter and you get a one-time deferral, and if you're offered a letter again, you go to the bottom of the list. So that's a clarification that happened in 2004, I believe. So that's it's in the code. I read it the other day because we're taking a hard look at this. So but I really appreciate this chart. Thank you.
Okay, Director Robinette?
Yes, I just wanted to go actually back to a couple of other things, Bob, that you were following up on, and I appreciate that. Whale Rock, you did meet then with a couple of the people from the county, right? But not the commission yet.
They were with the city
With
of
the city.
SLO, who really is the controlling interest, and they operate the Whale Rock Reservoir.
Okay, when you were there, what was there that, that's what I wanted, of course, a written commitment so that we would know that if that was did turn out to be our choice, that we would actually have it available. What was your sense of the meeting as far as commitment?
Well, I felt it was a positive meeting. It was, there was an openness to be able to listen and to hear about that alternative, and there was a discussion to try to get us on to one of the Whale Rock Commission future board meetings so we can describe it in much more detail, because they did mention that some of the other member agencies that may have representatives from outside the area, for example, that may not know that this had been going on for so many years. I mean, the Whale Rock concept has been floating around for probably 20 years in different ways, shapes, and forms in planning. So they did say it would be helpful to have an outreach at their Whale Rock Commission meeting, and then we would be invited to do a presentation at that point in time and answer questions. So it's a step in the right direction, and I can't get too far ahead of the process at this point, but I thought, again, I felt favorable leaving that meeting that, they would at least listen to us, and there'd probably be, a lot of negotiation if it was to go forward as a preferred alternative, but I didn't see any fatal flaws or sense anything that would, say, close the door on us approaching them.
Thank you. I would only say again that for my part, I will be much more comfortable with these 3 alternatives that we started with 4 and went down to 3. I would still think that it's critical, in fact, that those 3, that we don't have possibilities, if we choose one of those, that in fact after the process, whenever we finally get to that place in the future journey, to find that it's not going to be available. So I would just encourage you on, again, all 3, that we want to know that they are actually valid choices before we invest time and perhaps choose one that doesn't turn out that we could do it. Thank you.
Director Clift, were you wanting to speak?
I have a question for the general manager. On the finance manager's report, and I know the finance manager isn't here today, and I don't expect an answer today, but in looking at the loans, outstanding loans, with the rate of return, we're continuing to have a very healthy reserves. And with the rate of return that we're receiving on that, and based on the federal government's indication that rate of return probably won't increase at all in the next year or 2, I'd like to have a report next month, if possible, on prepaying 1 or 2 of these loans. Just a quick number, like on the first loan, that we would probably have an outstanding balance of a little over $216,000. in June. By prepaying that, my perception is that we save about $6,800, including the penalty for prepaying it. And if we don't prepay it, we get to earn about $1,900. And it just seems to me simple math says leaving the money in the bank and maybe earning $1,500 to $1,900 interest when I could save $6,000 to $7,000 in interest payments. I would like to see an analysis of at least the 3 loans that have no or very low penalty points, and also the amounts are lower. So just as a prudent use of our own money, and also probably making our financial position stronger relative to bonding, and if we want to do something with Stewart Street tanks and rodeo grounds. So that's my only comments.
Mr. Gerb, I have basically 2 questions and a comment. I think I'll start with a comment. In the fire chief's report, and I don't think that Captain Gibson mentioned it, because of the change of the daylight savings time last week, the fire chief would like to remind everyone to change the batteries in their smoke detectors, but more importantly, if anyone needs assistance in doing so, that the fire department would certainly be available to help them with that, and they should be contacted at 927-6240. I know some folks have pretty high ceilings, and those get to be difficult sometimes, so the fire department's willing to help and assist with that. 2 questions related to your report. One has to do with the fats, oils, and grease program that you mentioned, and perhaps you could just expand upon that a little bit for the folks that are observing this meeting in terms of what that entails. And then also just a brief update on the Main Street Bridge replacement project and what people in this community can expect with respect to that project.
Thank you, President Thompson. FOG, as it's referred to, fats, oils, and grease, is a component of our SSMP, which is a sanitary sewer management plan, which is mandated by the state to make sure that we're staying updated with our lift stations, our pumps, our motors, and our collection system. We've had some significant SSOs. I know I lose a lot of acronyms, forgive me. Sanitary sewer overflows within the system. So about 1.5 years or so ago, the board approved the sanitary sewer management plan, both phases, and as a component of that, there was fats, oils, and grease. We're required to make sure that restaurants and businesses and industrial kitchens are properly disposing of the grease from their facilities. If they do not, and it goes down into the lines, it causes problems. It causes maintenance issues, it causes sewer backups and things like that. And so this program is part of working collaboratively with the businesses and the community in making sure that the grease traps that they have are properly, being maintained. And if they aren't, making recommendations to them to improve their systems so they do not pour grease down the sinks and we have problems within our system. So was that?
That's fine. Then just the Main Street Bridge, what's...
and the Main Street Bridge is the project that is, it's been deferred for a while. It was supposed to start in spring of 2013. You can see that they're starting to do some preliminary work out there as far as the infrastructure goes. Our role in it is working with the county on the mitigation for the stream bank. That property that the CCSD owns, there's a portion of it on the stream bank that will need to be mitigated. As far as plantings go for erosion control purposes, and we'll be entering into an agreement and a memorandum of understanding that I'll be bringing back to the board in April that will allow for the county to plant on our property to mitigate any erosion from the stream bank. I made sure, the first thing that I ask is, you know, what's it going to cost us and what is our obligation? And so in the cover letter I got from the county the other day, the Public Works Department specifically stated that it's not going to cost you anything, and it's our responsibility, which I was a little concerned at first that we were going to be entering into something that would cost us money to maintain in perpetuity. And so what it is just allowing them to plant on a piece of our property that needs to be mitigated as the process goes forward. I could also reach out to the county, Dave Flynn, and make sure that he's communicating to us on an ongoing basis of the impact it's going to have to the community, and that I can share that as part of my general manager's report as that process
I think
moves
that's probably the
forward.
most important thing is what impact, how much closing
Yeah.
of Main Street will occur and how long or what periods of time. That's probably the most important.
And I can, you know, I work pretty closely with the Public Works on things, so I'll make sure that they're in communication with us. And then we have to be out there on an ongoing basis anyway. We have utilities that run through that area and things like that, so it's not going to be like we're not going to be actively involved in that process.
But it seems to me that if Main Street is closed for any period of time, the diversion onto Eaton so I think we need to notify those people that can happen, when it can happen, and let them notify considerably ahead of time, rather than just notifying Jim, who's next door to the project.
Right, I can comment a little bit about it at the NCAC about 2 years ago, and at the Board of Supervisors and at the Planning Commission. The design that was accepted was to run the bridge a little bit upstream and keep the present bridge open for the entire construction project. But there will be a time when they have to reconnect the bridges, but I think that's going to be kept to a minimum, actually a matter of days or less. That's the best I know, but you should get an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
In regard to Director Cliff's question about the analysis of the funds and paying those off, we'll include that as part of the April agenda, and we can provide that to the board. Because we do have some pretty expensive things on the horizon that we're going to need to discuss at ad hoc committee levels. The Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, we just finished that CIP list, and Bob and I, working with staff, have pretty much rewritten that whole thing. And that's the next huge step to get the connection fees. As Mary asked, what's the price of the connection fees? Well, we're not there yet. We're giving them the information to determine what that cost is going to be based on those things that need to be replaced. But, that's a pretty good sized list that's pretty expensive. So we're going to have to address those at some point in time, and we can't continue to defer our infrastructure needs, including the rodeo grounds.
And Director Rice?
One thing on the county planting by the creek, I assume, maybe shouldn't assume, how is the community going to know that they're not planting, say, I don't know, eucalyptus, which we just recently took out because it's non-native? Are there, their planting plans, I hope, would include things that are supposed to be,
What I did
or
is
improve the habitat?
It's a good question. What I did is I forwarded the agreement on to District Council for their review to make sure there's no language in there that obligates us. But then as District Council reviews it, I think it's appropriate also to circulate it to FFRP, possibly Joel and Butler and things like that, to make sure that they, and Carlos has already seen a copy of it, to make sure that we're not planning things that are going to wind up costing us something like eucalyptus down the road. Is a very good point.
And I just had one, if I may, one last question about about monitoring the water use efficiency program. Has there been any progress made on either a software program or what methodologies were going to be used for tracking the program?
No, there hasn't.
Okay, that concludes item 9A under, 6A. Yeah. Wishful thinking, that was, okay.
How clever is
That concludes item number 6A. So with respect to 6B, I do have a statement to read regarding the issue of retiree health benefits, which has been on the table for a number of months, and this is that statement. Over the last few months, a number of CCSD retired employees have expressed concerns regarding changes to the health benefits being provided to them and the impact of those changes. A number of directors, including myself, had indicated we would review the issue, and this we have done. Since the letters and statements made during public comment at our meetings have included allegations that their rights are being violated and that lawsuits could be brought against the district, we have held closed sessions in order to review these issues and receive advice from legal counsel. Since there has been a threat of litigation, it's not appropriate to get into an extended public discussion regarding this matter. However, I believe a brief public statement is desirable in order to provide some clarification and to ensure that the record accurately reflects the issue and the board's position. The recent negotiations with the district's two represented labor groups, Fire and SEIU, resulted in changes that provide that the CCSD will pay 90% of the premium for employees and dependents for health insurance. For instance, the premium for an individual plan is $550, of which CCSD pays $495 and the retiree pays $55 per month. The PPO plan for individuals is $611, with the retiree paying $116 per month. Prior to this change, the district had been paying 95% of the premium. Before 2004, the district had paid 100% of the premium for employees. The same formula has also applied to all other employees. Since the changes from the district paying 95% to now paying 90% of the health insurance premium, the actual dollar impact on individual retirees is not great, although we can certainly understand concerns that have been expressed from retirees who are on limited fixed incomes. The labor agreements between the district and the represented employees over the years has always provided that the district's health insurance premium payments apply to retirees and their dependents in the same manner as to active employees and their dependents. In the past, when there have been changes to the health insurance benefits for active employees, they have also been consistently applied to retirees. Therefore, despite the assertions that have been made regarding the most recent changes, the changes are consistent with what has been done in the past, and importantly, is simply applying the benefit to retirees that they are entitled to. It is really important to understand that the language in the labor agreements is also consistent with the requirements of the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act. Since the district provides health insurance for active and retired employees through CalPERS Medical, it is bound by this law. As mentioned, given the threat of litigation against the district, it is not appropriate to get into an extended public discussion of this matter, especially as it relates to the various legal theories that have been asserted in some of the letters and the comments to the district. I can say, however, that we believe the district's actions are lawful and legally defensible. While we understand the concerns that have been expressed by some retirees and can appreciate the fact that many retirees are on fixed incomes and do not welcome additional costs and expenses for their health insurance, as stewards of the district's limited financial resources, we believe that the changes to the health insurance premiums that we have negotiated with the CCSD's employees are appropriate and consistent with our obligations to reduce the district's labor costs. Again, I want to emphasize that the benefits being provided to retirees are based upon the benefits that they are entitled to under the labor agreements and under the law, and are exactly how the CCSD has consistently interpreted and applied those benefits over the years. Thank you. Okay. Which brings us, Ms. Dickinson, you have a comment regarding my statement? Okay.
Thank you, President Thompson. I don't think that the retirees really have any idea of how fortunate they are to be contributing such a small amount. I recently signed up for Medicare, and for my husband and myself, it's about $600 a month. So $55 is really insignificant. And to be on a PPO for $116 a month, it's a deal. It's a gold-plated deal. And as far as I'm concerned, as a ratepayer and help towards these benefits, they should not be complaining. They need to find out what others are having to pay. And I applaud you for making that for the decision, or and for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Okay, moving to item 7, consent agenda. We have the consent agenda before us.
Member reports, do you have any?
Oh, I'm sorry. I get caught up with myself. Other member committee reports. Director Rice.
This month I did attend the Water Resources Advisory Committee meeting and went to the Board of Supervisors meeting where they discussed the RMS, and they were good discussions, and without hearing the entire meeting, it's hard to grasp what it was that the decisions meant, because the discussion actually was much more optimistic in terms of looking at what are the resources in terms of figuring out how to walk these lines. I also this week attended 2 leadership seminars that the CSDA put on. Merle was there too. This is part of board training that helps reduce our insurance rates, and they were valuable meetings. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to go.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Clift?
Yeah, I'll report that I too attended, of course, the Board of Supervisors meeting and part of the RAC meeting, and they've been already reported on what took place there. I also had meetings with county council, county staff, and county supervisors regarding our request for removal to change to level 1 situation there. And I can talk later on under 9A about some of the things that were discussed at that point. I too attended the Leadership Academy and appreciate the support from the board on that, and it's extremely interesting to meet with other board members and find that we're not alone in all of our problems, and so it was very good. The other meetings that I attended have already been reported on with the ad hoc committees, and the last night I attended NCAC meeting and made our reports to them. They are very interested in the Kingston Bay project, and although we're probably completed our portion of whatever to do with the Kingston Bay project, there is still considerable concern about the county not taking into account the recommendations of the NCAC. I think they were more upset about that than the actual individual recommendations. That they seem to be very concerned that even though they understand their advisory body, what they recommend, they didn't feel got to the final place, and that may have some carryover in what we might discuss in the last item on our agenda too when we talk there. Anyhow, that's all. That's
okay. No. All right. We have the consent agenda before us. Any comments on it?
No comments. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Hearings and appeal, none. And regular business, I would think that before we get into regular business, perhaps a 10-minute break would be in order. And then we'll...
5 minutes.
request, so I'm going to really ask that everyone keep their comments to 3 minutes. I would also ask that that comments be directed to the chair and not to individual board members or staff or anyone else in the audience. And I would ask that everyone be respectful in making your comments. I know that there's a difference of opinion on this issue, and so I would ask that everyone keep the remainder of the issue very civil. After the public comment time, I will read some snippets from letters that I received for people who are not in attendance. If we received a letter from a person and that person is here commenting on public comment, then I won't read their letter. I assume that they will cover the material during their public comment time. And following that, we'll bring the matter before the board. Okay, with that, Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, President Thompson and board members. The board, you have a green sheet with you today, and the reason you have that is we wanted to add a language referring to the water use efficiency program, and so there was a slight change, and that language is now included in Staff Report 9A. In addition to that, on page 45 of that plan and the third page of your green packet, you'll see a graph that ties into the change that was made in the green sheet relating to acre-feet of water between 2012 and 2022. And then you also have page 46 of the plan that it's the comparison of conservation program cost and savings, California, Cambria, California. So we've included those two. I apologize for the slight change, but we thought it would be important to capture that language that is currently within the plan that was adopted by the board last month as part of the water use efficiency program. Before the board today is Agenda 9A. Its consideration to adopt a resolution 09-0213 approving the issuance of intent to serve letters of an interim basis while the district continues to pursue a long-term supplemental water supply project. The recommendations. It is recommended that the Board of Directors adopt Resolution 09-2013, approving the issuance of intent to serve letters on an interim basis while the district continues to pursue a long-term supplemental water supply project. Interim issues of intent to serve letters. By adoption of this resolution, the board will be directing staff to implement the Water Use Efficiency Plan, otherwise known as the WUEF, and the interim issue of intent to serve letters through the use of the water demand offset in compliance with the San Luis Obispo County Local Coastal Plan, Cambria-wide Community Plan, Condition 4B. The fiscal impact. New development will be required to fund the demand offset water use efficiency measures being completed as part of the district's adopted comprehensive water conservation program, or to take the lead in completing conservation measures within the district's water service area. Discussion. On November 15, 2001, the Board of Directors determined that there was sufficient evidence to support the declaration of a water shortage emergency, pursuant to the provisions of Section 350 of the California Water Code, and subsequently adopted implementing regulations and restrictions pursuant to Water Code Section 353. The restrictions included the immediate suspension of the issuance of any additional intent to serve letters, which had the effect of creating a moratorium on any new water service commitments. At its February 28, 2013 meeting, the Board of Directors approved a Water Use Efficiency Plan, Program B. This plan, in combination with more water-efficient fixtures required by the district's municipal code and plumbing code updates, will result in a savings of approximately 99 acre-feet of water per year by the year 2020, which will allow serving a limited number of new connections while the CCSD pursues a long-term supplemental water supply project. Issuing new intent to serve letters based upon these water savings is consistent with the Cambria Community-wide Condition 4B of the North Coast Area Plan. That condition provides that absent a new major public water supply project for Cambria, new development resulting in increased water use shall offset such increase through retrofits of existing water fixtures within the Cambria Community Services District service area, or through other verifiable actions to reduce existing water use. It is important to note that the NCAP is part of the San Luis Obispo County land use and circulation element of its general plan, and also serves as a local coastal plan certified by the California Coastal Commission. Although Water Code 350 provides the legal authority for denying new connections when there is a declared water shortage emergency, such a prohibition is discretionary. Water Code 353 expressly authorized the Board of Directors to adopt such regulations and restrictions on the delivery of water and the consumption for public use as will, in the sound discretion of such governing body, conserve the water supply for the greater public benefit, with particular regards to domestic use, sanitation, and fire protection. Accordingly, findings have been included in the attached resolution to provide for the modification of the regulation and restrictions that have been adopted to implement the Water Code Section 350 Water Shortage Emergency Declaration in order to provide for the interim issuance of intent to serve letters based upon implementation of the WUEP and in compliance with Condition 4B. Findings have also been included relating to the County of San Luis Obispo's Growth Management Ordinance, otherwise known as the GMO. Since the allocation of dwelling units is expressively based upon recognition of the CCSD's allocation of resources as established by the CCSD's own resource management policies and ordinances. The resolution directs CCSD staff to work with the county staff to amend the GMO to permit the interim issue of intent to serve letters, which would be substantially less than the number of dwelling units that could be allowed under the county's growth management limit, and will further be controlled by the amount of conservation achieved within the district service area. Since the administrative activities to implement the WUEP and the interim issue of intent to serve letters will not result in direct or indirect physical change to the environment, staff has concluded that it is exempt from the CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15378B5. Also, approval of individual utility service connections is exempt under Section 15268B4. Additionally, the interim issue of intent to serve letters is not subject to CEQA review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3 and also Section 15378B2, General Policies and Procedure Making. Since the Board of Directors is providing direction to create policy and procedures to implement existing Cambria community-wide Section 4B of the North Coast Area Plan, which will be implemented in a manner consistent with the consisting of the Growth Management Ordinance, accordingly, the resolution provides that the district clerk is to file the appropriate notice of exemption. And Board, attached is the resolution for your deliberation today, and with that, I'll turn it back over to President Thompson, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gruber. We will now commence with the public hearing in roughly the order in which we received the requests. The first person to speak will be Brenda Rutherford, followed by Mary Webb.
Thank you, Board. My name is Brenda Rutherford, and I'm from Sacramento, California. My husband and I request that you return to a minimum of 1% growth. We have waited for a long time to build in Cambria. We've owned our lot for about 13 years. We've been waiting through the moratorium. In the meantime, my husband, who's an architect, has designed and redesigned our house multiple times. And of course now, since we're 10 years older, it'll be a considerably smaller house. we feel that the town economy would benefit in allowing this growth because it would mean more jobs and more revenue to the community. So we just ask that you vote favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rutherford. Mary Webb, followed by Christine Hendricks.
Mary Webb, Cambria. I did submit a 4-page letter that I wanted to be included in the record, and I did send an email yesterday where I would also like to have the attorney's memo that was written in 2011 included in the record for this hearing, because the memo that he wrote in 2011 is at odds with much of what is in the resolution today. We are growing. We are growing at about 0.5% a year right now. We've added something like 202 connections during this moratorium. So there are things in the resolution that I have a problem with that I don't think are correct. There's been no evidence offered of a tie between Cambria's moratorium and the stagnation of Cambria's economy. All references to economy and stimulating the economy should be stripped from this resolution, because I don't think it's under the purview of the CCSD, and I also don't. There's no evidence to show that there's any effect at all of this lack of building on local businesses. The economy of the U.S. has been in recession since 2008. We could also argue that Cambria has been spared the foreclosure debacle that occurred in this most speculative real estate market across the country. Our community might be better off not having that speculation during this period of time. That's important to me as a homeowner. No evidence has been offered of a serious and deleterious effect on local businesses. There is no guarantee home builders would use local contractors, local hardware stores, or local businesses in their construction project. The resolution offers a limited number of connections, and that needs to be defined. I think it's too vague. What is a limited number? Is it 2? Is it 200? Opening the wait list under these conditions could allow the rest of the water wait list to take legal action against us, when we've been able to put that at bay so far because we don't have a long-term water supply. So now basically I think by opening it, we're putting ourselves at risk, which would be fine for the lawyers, to be sued by the rest of the wait list to have all this stuff happen sooner, where we've been able to keep it at bay until we get a long-term water supply project. The vacancy rate of 32% is not listed anywhere in here. It needs to be factored into our water need. The projection of water savings through efficiency does not guarantee the results of having those savings. We need a pilot project, which has been suggested many times, that the People's Self-Help Housing, which was an unforeseen project, be considered a pilot project. That was recommended to the Board of Supervisors, and I would agree with that and think that's a good idea, to let the affordable housing be built, and then let's just see where we are with our water in about 3 years. The consistency with the SLO County Area Plan does not guarantee consistency with the local coastal plan. Approving this resolution could result in lengthy appeals, costing the community much more in legal fees than the resolution hopes to gain through conservation, retrofit, and connection fees. It's not in the best interest of the community to issue new intent to serves when no new water supply has been approved, and the EIR, this could take years to get a new water supply. From the District Council Hirsch's memo of 2011, he says, in a sense, if the moratorium was to be lifted and new water connections permitted and increased use allowed, it would undermine what has been saved and achieved. In a sense, the community's success in reducing water use and demand would arguably result in it being more vulnerable in future droughts, as well as not meeting the requirement when the moratorium was established, or suspending the issuance of additional intent to serves until it is found that sufficient water is available to reserve current and future demands. There's much more in my letter, but you have it on file. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Christine Hendricks, followed by Jim Spencer.
Thank you. The stated fiscal impact of this resolution is that new development will be required to fund the demand of offset water use efficiency measures being completed, and that somehow Cambria needs this growth in order to pay for the future. There's no data offered in support of this. It seems ridiculous on the face of it. I can't see the connection between issuing permits and increasing the economy in Cambria. If there's some information that certainly needs to be brought forward and given in support of this. there are economic problems in Cambria, but how these two situations are connected is very unclear. There are a lot of businesses that are doing well. There's a yarn shop in Cambria that's just recently expanded, and that's certainly a niche business. You know, if they're able to do it, I'm not sure what the problem is. Mary already read part of what I would put forward from the legal opinion of March 24th, 2011, which I think raising the question of the board acting in opposition to its own legal advice opens the board in Cambria to a dubious legal position. Reading from that opinion, staff has indicated that some of the impetus leading to the board's request for information about the legal requirements for ending the restrictions and regulations that have been imposed as a result of the declaration of a water shortage emergency is based upon successful conservation efforts, which has resulted in water consumption having been reduced in recent years. In reviewing these enhanced conservation and capacity issues with staff, a great deal of concern has been expressed regarding the proposal of lifting the moratorium. As a result, this concern is based on the fact that while use may have been reduced through the successful implementation of the range of restrictions and regulations on water usage, and storage has and will be increased, the fact of the matter remains that the CCSD's water supply is still limited, finite, and has not been replenished or augmented within the meaning of Water Code Section 355. The NCAP points out that Cambria's successful conservation programs can actually limit the ability of the community to deal with future shortages. One consequence of building regulations and retrofit programs that require low water use plumbing fixtures is that a community's ability to respond to a drought becomes somewhat diminished. The more efficiently a community uses its water on a day-to-day basis, the less flexibility it has to respond to a severe drought. This is certainly true in Cambria, where more efficient water use and a significant number of additional dwelling units combine to raise concerns about the community's ability to respond adequately to droughts. There are other considerations beyond residential. Mary is already putting that opinion back into the record, and I recommend that you consider this far more carefully before approving any future letters of intent to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. Jim Spencer, followed by Paul McDonald.
Thank you. I am Jim Spencer. First time I came to Cambria was, I think, in 1949. We were on a 2-week camping trip in Morro Bay, and we drove up every day from Morro Bay to Cambria along a long, winding, narrow road. And all I remember as a small child was this little small town there, and I thought, why are we doing this? But I remember loving the surf on the beach and the rocks. I came back, began to spend more time in Cambria and in the North Coast when I became the college architect for Cuesta College, and that was 1990. And I was the master planning college architect there until I retired in 2008. Made many friends, learned a great deal about the local economy. One of the things that we looked at very carefully was designing our buildings there to utilize materials that were manufactured in the county. You know, wood is not actually produced in this county. I'd like to design a house for my wife and I. We bought our lot in 2002, so it's now been 11 years. We paid market rates on that lot, and we paid over $20,000 in property taxes for a piece of property that we can't even legally camp on. And we have no voice, no legal voice at all under the current situation. It's really quite unfair. But I'd like to design a highly sustainable home. Water conservation will be one of the major features. It'll be incorporate cisterns to conserve the water so we can use wintertime water that otherwise would run off and use that to infuse the water table to try to save the Monterey pines. I've lost over 50% of the pines on my property. I had the property surveyed when I bought it. And used low flow front loaders, instant water heaters at point of use, energy conservation, everything else I can think of. That's exactly what I hope to do. We hope to retire here and I actually am already retired, and I'm 71 years old, so I'm beginning to run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Next, we have Paul McDonald, followed by Bob Halstead.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, staff. My name is Paul McDonald. I reside in Park Hill on Norfolk Street in a house we built in 2008 using local contractors and suppliers. I'm here today to speak in favor of the resolution. This approach will allow the district to meet its legal obligation to those on the wait list. And full disclosure, I'm on the wait list because I had to trade my wait list position for a water meter, for which we paid dearly in 2006. And allows you to meet that obligation to those on the wait list while simultaneously providing a financial boost to the community as well as to the district, which will benefit by having connection fee revenue coming in available to help the district pay for the retrofit program and other important uses. So I appreciate your consideration of this issue, and I urge its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Bob Halstead, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Bob Halstead, Cambria lot owner. I generally like to follow Darrell Robinson, so I can just say whatever he said goes for me too. But I support the resolution, and I'd like to see you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halstead. We appreciate your brevity. Next, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Joel Robinson.
So on the same model, Mr. President, if he has some minutes left over, may I spend them?
Doesn't work that way.
I know. Mr. President, I have sent you all by email this letter and now have given the clerk hard copies for you and the general manager and the clerk. And I will not be able to read the whole thing, but I want to say that there are 7 issues that I raise in this letter. The first is the matter of collaboration, which the county has asked to do with you. And I have strongly urged you in a previous email to continue this item because there is nothing in the material today that even addresses what the Water Resources Advisory Committee and the Board of Supervisors of San Luis Obispo County have decided. They have made official actions. And so I think it is not germane to address this as a board now because you don't yet have the sufficient information from the county. The next question I have is verification. I will ask you 4 questions. I'm quoting in the letter, but I won't quote what you have in the staff report. What process has been or will be adopted to provide the required verification of reduced water use? This was several times asked by the Board of Supervisors as well. What level of reduction will sufficiently offset the increased water use from the new development? Will the increased water use be measured by actual demand over a specified period of time for both retrofits and new development of fixtures in Cambria? Or will it be measured strictly by the gallon usage of technology averaged over the past usage of other communities, for example, the average of the state of California? There's complete vagueness as to how you will determine water use and the comparative gallons. My third point is on funding. My questions. Where is the analysis of options for funding the demand offset measures? I referred to a quoted section here. There is no reference at all to how you analyze the options for funding, but you chose one of them, or are asked to now. What procedure and data led to the decision that new development is required? No indication whatsoever what the procedure was. The number of intent to serve letters, this has been brought up before, but if you can specify that 99 acre-feet will be saved per year by 2020, why are you unable to give the minimum and maximum number of intent to serve letters that you will issue? You can't play up big numbers over here and then say you don't know the numbers over here. You've got to have clarity about their interrelationship. 5, Cambria's economy. I will quote what it says twice in here. Whereas as a result of the Section 350 declaration, extremely limited new development has taken place, paren 200, and thus limited new growth has resulted in the stagnation of Cambria's economy and has had a serious and deleterious effect on many businesses in the community. Where are the numbers? What constitutes this stagnation? What constitutes, et cetera? How has any study been done to evaluate the claims of cause and effect here? If I say the problem in Cambria is that we don't have enough women wearing straw hats, that's it. And if we did, we'd have better, where is it? I will have to stop, my 3 minutes are up, but I tell you, if you look at the environmental section of the Medeiros report, you will see 2 references saying it has nothing to do with the environment. And yet here are audacious claims beyond belief. I might write up a viewpoint because I think all 7 of my points are crucial to deliberate what constitutes the well-being of this community in which you are explicitly interested according to this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen. Darrell Robinson, followed by Cynthia Hawley.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you. My name is Darrell Robinson, and I'm from Huntington Beach, California, and I'm president of United Lot Owners of Cambria. It occurs to me that you're being accused today of considering a resolution based on a lot of flimsy data, and really reminds me of being at this podium back in 2011 talking to a different board about flimsy data that was used to support the declaration of the moratorium. Well, the data supporting the moratorium was a lot more flimsy than the data that supports this resolution today. So, and here we are 12 years later looking at nothing that was talked about in that moratorium findings suggesting what would be coming down the road ever came true. So when we were there 12 years ago talking about that data being flimsy, we are vindicated. It was flimsy and it was wrong. So I just wanted to express appreciation to all of you for the hard work you're doing, both the elected members and the staff. I know it's been a long road, it's a complex issue, but I think that it's going to take a lot of courage if you're going to vote yes on this measure today, but I'm here to assure you that the yes vote would be the right thing. And if you do decide that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Cynthia Hawley, followed by Rick and Nancy Rentler.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Hawley, and I'm here today representing Landwatch, the Cambria Landwatch, San Luis Obispo County. Sorry, I just got back from leaving. A couple things I want to say. This action that you're taking today requires CEQA review. You construe it as an administrative action that, what do you say, only administrative activity. And if it's an administrative activity, you're saying that CEQA doesn't apply. However, what you're doing here, calling it an administrative activity that doesn't have any effect on the environment, is telling us that you're administratively creating paper water, and which is prohibited by law. We're under a water moratorium in this town, and what you're doing substantively or plan to do is to lift the moratorium, because you're planning to issue new water services. This is a real water shortage. It's not an administrative water shortage. It has to do with the public health and safety and your duty to protect the public health and safety. An initial study is required. Your idea that it's exempt from CEQA is wrong. The quote that you give is that your reliance on is that it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that the activity in question will have a significant effect on the environment, which it will. You're going to be issuing new permanent water draws on a system that's already overdrawn. What you left out of the talk this morning, your report this morning, was the Water Advisory Council and the County of San Luis Obispo, both of which denied you eliminating the level 3 of severity of the water resource. Level 3 is the highest level of severity of a of depletion of a water resource, and it means it's at or exceeds the resource capacity. What's going to happen when you issue a new intent to serve letter, the county acts on it and issues a permit? This goes to the Coastal Commission on Appeal. Some poor family that wants to build a house, or a speculator who has put money into building a house, finds out there's no water. What's going to happen then? The county has a duty also to protect our water resource and has refused to lift the level of severity. In relation to, the reality is that allowing new permanent water based on administrative activities is not legal. Water Code 353, which you rely on, gives you the authority, once you've established the emergency, gives you the authority to go ahead and have a moratorium on water issuance. However, I would like to just quote this one section of the law which you left out of your water.
Can you do that in about 15
Yes,
seconds?
I can.
Thank you.
Water Code 355 states that whenever restrictions you impose on water use authorized by Section 353, you shall thereafter be and remain in full force and effect during the period of the emergency and until the supply of water available for distribution within such area has been replenished or augmented, which it has not. And I want to place into the record for this action a memo from your attorneys dated March 24th, 2011, which just about contradicts everything that you're saying here today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hawley. Rick and Nancy Rentler, followed by Steve Figler.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nancy Rentler. This is my husband, Richard, and we are future Cambrians, we hope, currently residing in Santa Rosa Valley, California. We are position number 70 on the wait list. We purchased our property in 1988, some 24 years ago. We have been waiting ever since. When we purchased our property, we were just married a few years, had come up to Cambria every year on our anniversary, and absolutely love Cambria. We had intended on building a house and raising our daughter there. She's now in grad school. Time goes on. Excuse me. This moratorium has been here long enough. It's crippling this beautiful town. Restaurants and businesses that we used to go to are no longer even here. I don't understand how local Cambrians can't see that right in front of their eyes. This water shortage scenario that was the basis for this moratorium has never surfaced. It's never been realized. In fact, every report we keep hearing is the acre footage of water that was expected to be used is not even come near or close to being used. We've been extremely patient, extremely patient. We'd like to thank you, the CCSD and the staff, for all the hard work you've put into this for the last 20-some years. This is obviously a very emotional and difficult issue. We'd like to thank the board, although the faces keep changing, but we appreciate all the work you've done and your predecessors are done to, for your effort, your service, and the commitment you all have to Cambria property owners, not just current residents. We highly encourage your support and adoption of this resolution 09-2013, approving the interim issuance of intent to serve letters. Please, please vote yes to approve this resolution. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Rentler. Steve Figler, followed by Jim Webb.
Good afternoon. Steve Figler speaking. I've been a resident of Cambria since 2000. I've owned land. I've owned a house here since 1998. I was not involved in local politics issues, whatever you want to call it, early on, when Mr. Robinson said that the moratorium was built upon flimsy, quote, flimsy data, and it was wrong. But that doesn't, and I'm not sure whether it was right or wrong, but that doesn't mean that current data should be built on a flimsy foundation. The resolution has 11 whereases. The dictionary definition of whereas is in view of the fact that, not in view of the opinion that, and then I will point particularly to the paragraph number 3, whereas number 3, which deals with a supposed stagnation of Cambria's economy, which has had, quote, serious and deleterious effect on many businesses in town. This is a small town. We don't have that many businesses. According to some people, we have fewer and fewer. Why would it be beyond the scope of the CCSD or the staff to do a study of the businesses in town, whether it's been growing, whether it hasn't been growing, just get some hard data. Get some data to support the whereas. That would seem to be a simple thing in a tiny town. Another issue, however, is that even if you do get it, I believe that it is inappropriate for a board to make judgments on economic issues. The board's calling, the board's purview, is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the town. Not, rightly or wrongly, not the economics of the town. And just one more thing. I'm just curious how many people in this meeting are voters in town. Could we see the hands of those people?
Mr. Figler, I don't think that's
okay.
necessarily germane. These people are stakeholders in this community.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your comments. Jim Webb, followed by Matthew Ortiz.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Webb, live in Cambria. Excuse me. I read over this resolution and it struck me, I'll try to be as simple as I can about it, that there's some things included that should not be there, and there's some things missing that should be added. The item that's included, which I feel is inappropriate, has been mentioned by several speakers before me, and that is the specious argument based on the local economy. There's no evidence offered of this. I've done extensive research to try to find figures to support this, and to put this piece of information in here without substantiation, I think, is a mistake. You would need to be able to demonstrate how the issuance of a moratorium has impacted the economy of Cambria above and beyond the downturn that we've experienced in this recent recession, which has been labeled the worst recession since the 1930s. And I don't believe that's possible, and I don't believe anyone's compiling that information. So, and the board says quite clearly, you know, their duty is to provide water and sewer services. You're not the Chamber of Commerce, and it's not really your role to try to engage in boosterism. That's the part I would delete. The part I would add comes after the words that what you want to do, this is, I don't know which whereas it is, but it's on page 2. It says that you want to conserve the water supply for the greatest public benefit with particular regard to domestic use, sanitation, and fire protection. And you have an and there, and I would say and the support of essential ecosystem functions in both creeks. The language that's missing from this document is the effect on the environment that is the basis of our economy here, I would argue. Our economy is a tourism economy. Our economy is not driven by home sales such as Santa Maria, Nipomo, Paso Robles. Our economy is driven primarily by tourism, and tourists come here to see the rich diversity of marine life and wildlife. They come to see the creeks, the riparian habitat, to walk our trails, to go on Fiscalini Ranch. And I think that that is an essential part of your responsibility, is to maintain that. In Mr. Hirsch's legal opinion or memo, he noted concerns over ESA, the Endangered Species Act, which is covering our local steelhead populations. Concerns over ESA compliance have limited past diversions from the Santa Rosa Creek aquifer and may well do so in the future. And I would ask the board that the one thing should be included is some mention of our local environment, and that the implementation of this resolution will not negatively impact the local environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Matthew Ortiz, followed by Mark and Marisco.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Ortiz. I'm here to represent myself, my wife, and my 2 children. The intent to serve letters, I came up from Long Beach today, and I just want to show my support to the board in hopes that you'll approve that, approve the intent to serve letters. I've just, as many people here, lot owners, I've been waiting. It's my dream to one day become a Cambrian and have my family live here. So that's it, just short and sweet. I'm just here to show my support for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Mr. and Mrs. Marsico, I'm sorry for butchering that name. Followed by Jim Silvers.
Hello, my name is Marie Marsico. This is my husband, Frank. We're from Southern California, and we are property owners here in your beautiful town. When we purchased our property, our children were little. We had a desire to come, build a home, raise a family, have a nice life. I didn't walk with a cane when I bought my property. Now I do. And so, yeah, it does get a little bit emotional when you see your life tick away and you think you want to make a move and there's nothing but red tape. It goes on and on and on. I commend the CCSD for implementing a conscientious program of water conservation. In Southern California, we've had low-flow shower heads, low-flow toilets, and drought-resistant landscaping for over 20 years. So I would say, yeah, get those shower heads on and do what you can do to move this along, this conservation. All of California has a drought, has water problems, is a desert. So yeah, I appreciate what you are looking into, and I appreciate that you've taken into consideration the people who have been sitting here waiting on a waiting list, you know, with a financial burden and no peace of mind as to how this thing is going to be resolved. I don't know about the economy stagnating in Cambria, but I've been looking around this room for a couple of hours. I think you need some fresh new blood here. So please, continue moving forward with your conservation goals. Lift the moratorium for families like ours. I thank you for all that you're doing. Please approve the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Marsico. Next, we have Jim Silvers, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Silvers, and I'm a 28-year resident of this community, businessman here in town. November 2001, I took my first trip down Lower Burton and Main Street and counted the businesses that were empty. I've done it every 6 months since then. I'm tired. But the current count is 25 plus. We began with 4. And despite the present current turn down of the economy, it's progressively gotten worse. Looking for a tie between the economy and the loss of businesses and the need of this resolution, well, perhaps you can get the phone book of 2001 and begin to look at the services that are no longer offered, and we who are used to being waited on will soon wait on ourselves. I believe that there is a connection. Secondly, I compliment you on trying to do something, complete the paradigm. Conservation has a balance, and it has a balance of how you use what you save. Energy is best measured when it's expended, not when it's contained. And I compliment you for doing the best you can. I'm reminded of the sign that was on the old Western Saloon, "Don't shoot the piano player. He's doing the best job he can." Well, thank you for leading us. Some people think you are a constituency representative. I think you're a leadership group. And so lead us into this new paradigm. Lead us into consensus. We've so long been in a quagmire of compartmentalized, segmented community ideas. I think Kelly, in his cartoon character, Pogo, said it well. We met the enemy and they are us. So sometimes we are they and they are us, and we have not moved this paradigm. I thank you for the schematic about the process of building, but I remind us that there is not a connection between when we want to move in the community and then at the times when the weather is good and the water's great. 28 years, I've lived through 4 cycles. We go about 7 years of no water and then plenty of water. This is moving us in the right direction. And just to remind us that there is a brake on this vehicle that you are proposing for us. There is a brake built into it that you can put a stop to it anytime you want to. But from the time a letter of inquiry is sent to a prospective builder, taking all the things that go involved in it, you're 28 months to 36 months before you ever turn on the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silvers. Tina Dickinson, followed by Patricia Budison.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. I am urging the board today not to adopt Resolution 9-2013, as I believe it to be an irresponsible action that could lead to devastating consequences for residents of Cambria. The CCSD's primary role, and indeed the reason for its existence, is to provide a safe water supply and sewer services for the residents of Cambria. The 2010 census reported a 3% decrease in Cambria's population, about 204 people, yet the water production has increased from the 2010-11 to 2011-12 by 28 acre feet, and I think that was actually corrected to actually 20 feet more, acre feet more, so it's 48 acre feet in a year. Conservation efforts have only just been adopted at the last board meeting of February 28th this year. No verification of projected savings of 99 acre feet per year by 2020 have been justified, as there has been no time to allow for any verification, as the Board of Supervisors reminded you last week at the meeting.
we've had very little rainfall this winter season, and heading now into spring and summer months, we have no way of knowing what our water level will be. The CSD, its role is to protect the supply and the quality of the water in an environmentally sensitive manner. It's not living up to its mission by adopting this resolution. I take issue with Mr. Robinson's remark of flimsy data. If the data was so flimsy, why is it that the Planning Commission last year would not change the GMO? Why is it the RAC denied your request? Why are the Board of Supervisors from our county denying the level of severity? It's not just a few folks in here who come to the meeting every month and pay attention. It is this county, and before you know it, it'll be the Coastal Commission. And you're setting yourselves up for a huge lawsuit that we will end up using the money we've paid in for. So I have sympathy, yes, but we bought a house in 1997, and there was no way on this earth we would have bought a lot in this town, even back then, knowing the situation. And so I urge you, I think this is an incredibly badly written resolution, and I can't believe the difference from what the lawyer for the council for our district in 2011 changed to what we have now. It's unbelievable, and it better not happen, because I think you will really get us into a big mess. Huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dickerson. Next we have Patricia Budison, followed by Jeff Hellman.
That's right. I'm here today with my husband, Frank. I'm Patricia Budison, as was said. We come from Riverside, California. We came up specifically today to support the passage of the interim issuance of water meters. We bought our lot in 1990, and at the time there was approximately 100 permits being issued. And of course, as the years have progressed, that's become less and less, and of course the last 10 years, the moratorium. When we bought the property, our daughter was 10. She's now 33. And of course, we're 20 years older as well. Most likely we're going to be supporting our daughter and her husband in building in Cambria, since we've gotten older in this period of time and most likely won't be able to build. But she's getting the property, so she will be a Cambrian. And I urge you to...
Hopefully.
I urge you to pass the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Budison. Jeff Hellman, followed by Bruce Kuntz.
Jeff Hellman, Cambrian. A couple of things that you guys might want to know. I haven't heard this so far from anybody else. This is the second day of spring. Yesterday was the first day of spring. I read in the Tribune that we've just come off we've had the driest winter in the recording of the weather. We may be going into a very, very severe drought, maybe not. But again, just to reiterate, we're 2 days away from the driest winter in recorded history in Cambria. So your timing is really awful on this. It's easy to be sympathetic with the people who, had their heart set on having a house, but don't destroy the community. And the other thing is, if you want to find out if, that we're having such a bad, awful economy, I would suggest that you check with the tax receipts of the county. They may have some kind of records. I'm a newbie. I've only been here 8 years, but boy, in the 8 years I've come here, the parking just to get into town has been awful. It seems like the Chamber of Commerce and the tourist boards are unprecedentedly successful. I mean, to tie the water thing in with local economy, I think, is really wrong. So keep in mind that you're going to really look like you have egg on your face if you pass resolutions, giving out lots more water. You just gave out, what, like 40 or all these apartments and all these, homes. You're giving out a lot of water already. If this is indeed the beginning of a really severe and bad drought, the decision you make today, if you go ahead with issuing more water meters, is going to make you guys look very, very incompetent.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman. Bruce Kuntz, followed by Linda Giordano.
Hi, yeah, Bruce Kuntz, Cambria, 33 years, and in those 33 years, we've studied a lot, and we've been around the, excuse me, the horn on this a whole bunch of times, and bottom line is we need water, okay? And you guys, that's your job, and you're going to develop that as you can, and a lot of the legal stuff is what's kept the board from accomplishing that over the years, and that's your issue. My thoughts here today are that these lot owners that you're hearing from today and the ones that I've spoken to over 30 years, you know, they pay taxes. They should have some rights. And, you know, 12, 13 years of moratorium, you know, it's just the situation doesn't look much different than when we went into moratorium. And we are a kind of poster child for water conservation. So I think we're, as a town, we're doing our share to accomplish what you guys are proposing today. And I would just add that if there's 4,000 homes about in Cambria and the number of that you want to issue is, say, 20, whatever the heck the number is, we're adding so little. We're adding like less than 1% every 2 or 3 years. Whatever the emergency is, whether it was a fire, whether it was a drought, or whether that's an emergency with 4,000 homes versus an emergency with 4,000, 20 or 30 homes, probably the same emergency. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. Linda Giordano.
Good afternoon, CCSD Board. My name is Linda Giordano, and I'm one of the few unfortunate Cambrians that actually owns a home here because of the economic downturn and also own a lot on the water wait list. Since moving to Cambria full-time 2 years ago, I've taken the time to attend many of these meetings. I've listened carefully to the members of the CCSD Board, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the residents discuss and argue about new and old water sources and water-saving opportunities. The growth policy, building regulations, and service fees for building in San Luis Obispo County ensure that Cambria is never going to have runaway growth. In fact, the CCSD has a finite number of lots that can ever be built on. And should it be done slowly? Absolutely. But slow and steady growth is not only necessary, it's essential to keeping Cambria the beautiful place in the Pines it's always been. But we shouldn't make it a bankrupt ghost town either because a few people don't want us to move forward. I've lived in numerous places throughout the United States in my 50-plus years, but I have never seen such a small group of people bent on destroying a town they profess to love. The 10 years or more of zero growth have forced the working class here to become the working poor. And I would submit the people that are making this happen by not wanting you to let us build at all are not visionaries trying to save Cambria as they proclaim. They're reactionaries trying to make this town move backwards. I urge you, CCSD Board, to do the right thing. You were elected to make the best decisions for this community. We're counting on you to do so by issuing intent to serve letters in an orderly, steady, and appropriate manner that reflects the needs and desires of the majority of residents, including those who own lots and want to build on them in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Giordano. That concludes the public hearing. As I indicated before, we received a large number of pieces of correspondence on this issue, some 25 written comments. I'm not going to read them all, obviously. Several of the people that have provided written documentation have also spoken, so I'm not going to go there. I just want to read a few snippets from the letters that we did receive and then put all these documents into the record, District Clerk. Okay, from Karen Harris. It has been 10 years since the moratorium took effect. That's a very long time for an emergency measure to be in place, especially since the emergency never occurred. It is grossly unfair to expect lot owners like myself to continue to pay ever-increasing property taxes on property that is in effect useless. Mr. and Mrs. Croyle, the moratorium has put us in a very bad position because now our money that should be going into something that will help us retire is being tied up in a totally worthless piece of land. From Art Dubé and Diane Dubé, in the 10 years that we have been paying a mortgage on this lot, we have also paid nearly $23,000 for property taxes, hundreds of dollars each year for weed abatement, and $80 each year for the water meter position. We love Cambria, and it was and still is our desire to live there. When we retire, we visit Cambria several times a year and enjoy the beauty and the businesses that exist. We value highly the coastal resources and treasure the uniqueness that makes Cambria so special. From Elaine Gulata, I selected and purchased my lot in 1999 with the understanding that I would be able to build my home in 2011 when I finished my obligation to the United States military. As a member of the military, I worked tirelessly during the recent war, in which often the only thing that kept me going was the dream of one day returning to Cambria. Hugh Brownlee, our intent and hope today is the same as upon purchase, to build a modest showcase green home as our primary residence and to become a permanent part of the Cambria community. From Alan Spitz, we have been retired since 2008 and still hope to build and relocate to Cambria, one of our favorite spots. Time is running out on our lives. Please consider those who purchased their property in good faith and expected to build a retirement home and are getting on in years. From Jim and Linda Ensley, we know that there are those who say we could buy an existing home. However, we cannot afford to buy an existing home at the same price and quality as it would cost to build a home on our current property, given its location and lot size. From Andra Sandberg and Erica Palazzo, our property was originally purchased by our parents who envisioned a quiet, peaceful retirement home by the beach. They died waiting to be able to build because of all the red tape and never did fulfill their life's dream. The closest they came was to have their ashes scattered in Cambria. We are sisters, house partners in our 60s and will retire in a year. Our lots were purchased over 50 years ago, spanning almost 3 generations for our family. Well, the closest we ever get to Cambria is be by spreading our ashes as well. Then finally, a lot has been said about the economy, and this letter is from Mel McCulloch, the president of the Cambria Chamber of Commerce. He writes, the vacant lot owners have paid their property taxes and have done their annual weed abatement for fire protection of the houses owned by those of us who reside in Cambria. The board of directors of the Cambria Chamber of Commerce, in support of and representing their 350-some members, supports the CCSD directors in their effort to obtain the necessary approvals to issue the intent to serve letters as soon as possible. And with that, fellow directors, I'll return the discussion to you. And who would like to kick it off? Director Rice?
Some excellent points. Thank you for all of you who sent emails and everybody who's here today. This is a pretty important issue, and managing the water resource is what this district is. One of our main parts of our mission is to provide water and sewer services. I agree with some of the speakers who said they have concerns about the resolution. I absolutely agree with the economic aspect being maybe too far reaching. If I were to craft a resolution myself, which I am not an attorney, and so I would not do that, I would prefer to see a resolution that strictly focused on what we actually have control over, which is the management of the water resource. And under Code 350, we are allowed to limit new connections, but we are not required to. And under 354, as long as we have enough water, we can issue new connections without lifting the 350 emergency. To bring in the fact that we want to make sure that there's new houses. We have no say over land use. That isn't really anything that we should be worried about. We do want to cooperate with the other agencies that would help people get to that point where they can build, whether it's the Coastal Commission or the county. But I think that it's important to note that the only thing we really can control is whether or not they have a complete application when they're ready to build at the county. And then the county has to take it from there. That's whether or not we issue an intent to serve letter is the only thing we really have control over. I feel confident that this community has enough water to, as long as we manage it well, to both provide water and fire protection for the community that's currently here, and a limited number of new connections, and protect the habitat. And I completely, 100% agree with Jim Webb, who said something that I think is critical that's missing in this resolution, which is that we recognize that as part of what goes forward, we are asking any new intent to serve letters we give out will have to show that they're not going to put any additional drain on either of the creeks and our water supply. This is also about habitat protection, and to not have that element in here when you have something about improving the economics, it's troubling. That said, I'm not sure that I would vote against this, because I do think that it's important that we really take some action on this. And I am confident. I've looked at all of the data, and whether the data is flimsy or not, sometimes the numbers work, sometimes they don't. And where they don't, we need to be looking at that and reviewing it. That said, as a leader in the community, I feel confident that issuing up to maybe even 10 intent to serve letters in a year would not significantly jeopardize the ability of the fire department to provide fire protection to the residents who are currently here and any new residents. And I feel confident that it will not negatively affect the amount of water that we have for current residents or for the habitat of both creeks. I could go on for days, but those are my main concerns and my main points on this.
Thank you, Director Riggs. Director Berenger?
Thank you. Linda Giordano did a very eloquent talk. I really appreciated her input, and I appreciated everybody's input, but I think we have several issues. The one is a long-term water supply project. We're not addressing that today. We're trying, and that long-term water project is, we have several options. We should move forward on those, but it's a different issue. And I also agree very strongly with Jim Webb's discussion about protecting the environment. That's a key issue with me, and certainly with the long-term water project, we're going to address that as much as we can. And that's what we need to focus on in order to really protect the environment and keep us from overdrafting our creeks. So I'm still laser focused on that. However, this particular resolution is needed. I think we need to move forward. If I were to make a motion, which I'd hope to be able to do so, I would be more than comfortable scratching the third whereas. We have enough other whereases in this entire resolution to justify releasing water meters, but the reference toward Cambria's economy is important, but as said, isn't one of our responsibilities. To comment on why the GMO growth management ordinance hasn't been reduced yet, it hasn't been rejected, it's definitely going to be addressed. And unless we take the first step, we need to start by issuing a letter in order to get the complex problem started. In order to do so, we can now address all of the issues that need to be addressed as far as that goes. Ms. Hawley commented on the fact that our creeks are overdrawn. The facts show that they aren't, but it's something we should be very careful of, and that the care that we have about keeping our creeks from being overdrawn in the future is to work on that long-term water alternatives plan. I appreciate all of the comments that were made, and other than that third whereas, I think we could move forward with this project immediately.
Thank you. Next, Director Robinette.
Next, okay. Well, this is an amazing moment together for everyone in this room. First of all, I need to start by telling you all how much I appreciate your interest, how much I appreciate your passion. And in fact, that's quite a common thread throughout this room. It just depends on passion of what. And yet I find that that when, at the end of the day, there is one thing clear. Everyone in this room is or wants to be a part of this community. And I really find that to be a very gratifying kind of observation. But it has been, for me listening today, it has been with certainly a lot of emotion in the air, and yet my responsibility will always be certainly to be open to that, and also to be mindful of reality, of facts, of what has happened over the last 10 years, for example, or 11 years since we first started this water code emergency. And it was based on certainly some concerns of what people were very much worried was going to happen. And today, we still have some that are still worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I don't know. None of us know that for sure. What I do know, in fact, is that the conditions in which the water emergency was used and declared are no longer the same today. What I do know is that the hope to protect the community from some water disaster that was pending did not happen yet. When will the yet be? I do not know. Will there be? I don't know. We talk about various things. We have different opinions, by the way, and I think fact is always, always important, but some have felt that we really are in a bad situation, that we have been really close to the edge over the years. Yet I look at certain facts. I look at the permits. When I first came on the board, one of the first things I did was to ask for the permits. I wanted to see, I like facts. And so I wanted to see how much water are we allowed by our permits. And these are from the California Water Control Board. These are from the California Coastal Commission. And I then look at what have we been doing for the last 10, even 20 years as far as water use. I look at the Urban Water Master Plan, and I look at the 810 acre foot that we've identified at this time as we don't want to exceed that. We have permits that I believe are quite a bit beyond that, but yet we haven't gotten even close to that, because I think that we conserve, and so anyway, I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry about that. I'll come back. Okay, but anyway, I guess what I'm saying is the decision I'm going to make here today is not taken lightly. It is taken on fact, and I do not believe that having a carefully considered beginning of some new growth, some construction, is going to put us at risk and jeopardy. I could go on, but I think I won't. Except for this. It's just another, I think it's one more thing that I carry with me, in fact. And while sometimes we think that people that are coming into the community are speculators, I don't think there's speculators in this room today, because I believe that speculators would never have stayed around for that amount of time. What I think we have here are people sincerely wanting to be here in a place that they love. I just want to share this with you. I got this from a lady, and I won't give her name because I haven't asked her permission, but this is what she said. She said she belongs to a family that's been here for 6 generations. And she now lives in a different area, and she has been wanting to come back and be with her family. And the last note that she has, she said, "Sorry, I'm not a Cambrian full-time yet. I am 79 years old, I'm a widow, and I need to be back here soon, desperately, because this is where my other family members live. You know, I think these are things that we have to see people for who they are, who they are. So anyway, I could go on. I don't know why, but I think it's an emotional afternoon. I just have to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinette. Director Clift?
Yes, I too want to thank everyone who appeared here today, took the time and sent the letters and such, and I'm glad to see the participation. And I too would not have a problem with striking number 3 out. I think it's probably superfluous to what we're actually talking about doing here. And that's really what I want to talk about, is what we're actually talking about doing here. We are not talking about removing the 350 emergency. And in my discussions with members of the county staff, that's hard for them to understand. In fact, their recommendation is to do that. Just go ahead and do it. And I don't think they understand the fact that this board is looking for a new water source and does not want to increase the water usage in this community until such time as a new water source is found. And so it's very hard to say, look, there is a water emergency situation in terms of increased supplies of water, if we were to increase the supplies of water. What this resolution is doing is changing some rules that I believe we legally have the right to change under the 353. A previous board made a rule that said no intent to serve letters. I think what this resolution is saying is that there could be intent to serve letters under very specific conditions. And those conditions are the same conditions that the county in the North Coast Area Plan and the Coastal Commission approved, which says you will offset any water usage by conservation. So it seems to me that it's extremely easy to verify. Are we using, if we issue intent to serve letters and do not carry through on the conservation program, we are then doing the wrong thing. But if we issue intent to serve letters based on conservation that is real and verifiable, and remember, even if we issue an intent to serve letter today, as Mr. Silver said, it could be 2 years before that building ever starts to use water, we will have some verifiable facts on what the conservation program is doing. We also still have a 350 emergency in place, which would simply allow us by resolution to apply different rules. And so we could correct a mistake if we are making a mistake. So I don't see this as anything more than saying we are becoming committed to a conservation program. That program could provide additional available water, and that available water should be provided to the people who have been sitting on this wait list for such a long period of time. And so I will support this because it is not removing the emergency. It is still focusing us on the fact that we have to find a new water source before we allow any kind of excessive, any kind of increase in water. And so it's incumbent on us, and it's incumbent on the staff, and it's incumbent on our population to understand that we are going to aggressively use conservation measures to allow some people to build a home. And if we use those conservation measures legitimately and the way we should not impact the creeks any more than we're impacting them today. We should not cause any additional injury to the environment than we are today. And whether it's 1 home or 10 homes or 15 homes or 20 homes or 1% or 0.5%, everybody seems to want a number. County seems to have that same complex of I got to have a number or else I don't know how to live. Instead of saying it depends upon what this board and this community can generate. And if we can generate enough conservation, even though we have sufficient water now, the facts show we have sufficient water now that we could probably issue a permit or two. I still think we have to very specifically verify that we're using conservation and that conservation is working. And that's the reason why I've had a lot of discussions with county people of saying, understand the 350 should still stay there because it gives us the flexibility to move back and forth on what the rules are as we go forward and see how this actually works. So I will support this, and I would support removing the third whereas, just so that it can be done. And I would surely support that as we come up on the rest of the conservation program, that it contains some very, very specific verifiable spot checks in it.
Thank you, Director Clift. Let me just weigh in. I intend to support this also because I think it's the right thing to do. One of the speakers wanted to know who in the audience could vote, which I think is totally irrelevant. Everyone in here, everyone that owns property is a stakeholder. They pay taxes, they clear their lots. I think that's just nonsense. Let me say that I have no problem with removing the third whereas. I do think it accurately reflects what the economic situation in this town has been. But I have no problem with removing it. We have some of the speakers questioned whether or not we had data on the economic issues. And certainly, I think if you talk to the Chamber of Commerce, they could give you the numbers of the businesses that we've lost from the Chamber over the last 10 years. Until several months ago, I owned a business in town, and I can tell you what my gross receipts were and, as compared to a number of years back. So yes, there has been an issue with respect to the economy. We used to have 2 hardware stores, now we have 1. We used to have X number of paint stores, now we have none. And that certainly can tell you what the situation is with respect to the contractors in town and the economic impact on them, on the realtors, and others. And so I think certainly the economic issues are a very real issue. Whether or not that's within our purview, that's one thing, but I certainly think it's a consideration. So that being the case, I intend to support this. And if we want to remove that, whereas that's
I don't argue with you on the point. I just think that I would agree that it's editorial rather than having a lot of the basis that we have on the other items.
Great.
Well, and you know, I don't want to remove the fact that we are in an economic issue because it is. I'd like to strike it for other reasons because it's really not our purview per se. However, when we have a constituency and we have an opportunity to be able to spread the bills over a larger number of people, if we lose shops, we're losing bill payers and our rate payers are suffering. So by having a 20% reduction in shops, we have 20% less business accounts. And so that is within our purview of funding our water delivery. So given that, I move that we adopt the resolution of the Board of Directors approving the issuance of intent to serve letters on an interim basis while the district continues to pursue a long-term supplemental water supply project and striking the third whereas in the resolution.
I'll
second.
Go ahead.
I
I'll
second.
defer to you.
That motion has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a couple of things.
Dr. Rice?
First thing, I want to make clear, the level of severity, the level of severity 3 was never certified by the county. And this is something that Mike Wynn brought up at the Water Resources, the RAC committee meeting. The level 3 severity, the county used to have a process where when a community had a high level of severity on one of their resources, they went and did a resource capacity study. So they looked at the numbers and they said, yeah, you actually do have a problem there, or you don't have a problem there. And that process was called certification. There was also a level, used to be, that was just recommended. So somebody on staff looked at whatever it was, and for us, it was they saw that we had a 350 declaration of a water emergency, and they said, well, that's an indicator right there that there might be a problem with the resource. Let's put it at level severity 3, and it's recommended that the Board of Supervisors approved that recommended, but the county has never looked at, the Planning Commission, the RAC, nobody's ever looked closely at our numbers. They're using our information, and they see the fact that we have a 350 emergency, and so they didn't want to change it because we still have a 350 emergency declaration. They haven't evaluated how we got to those numbers and whether or not it actually should be a level 3 severity, and it was my take on the discussion at that meeting was that they didn't have enough information to determine whether or not they should let that level of severity be changed. 2 other quick points. It's not true that nothing has changed since 2001. Some things have changed that have changed all over. Things like the number of gallons per flush of toilets that you are allowed to legally buy has gone down. In fact, water use has gone down approximately 1% per year just by natural replacement of things like washing machines, toilets, faucets, because you can no longer get the water wasting technologies that you used to be able to get. And so that is a very small amount, but it is something. I'm glad that the board supports removing the economic. I would like to say that it kind of concerns me that we haven't talked about discussed the process of how we're going to go forward on policy in terms of, do we send a letter of inquiry, or do we let people that want to build apply, and we rank them by the list? I mean, some of those things are policy issues that I'm concerned that we need to have discussion on at the board level. And as long as I'm assured that we will have those kind of policy discussions, then I'm a little less uncomfortable with some of those things.
I would think the Conservation Committee and the Utility Committee are going to set those kinds of recommendations that should come back to this board, and we set the policy as to how it's going to be.
Right.
We've still got a process here of a few months of putting together what we're going to expect.
And help me understand how we're going to assure that somebody's building a house and we don't have somebody that can't install the shower head because of the plumbing situation. And so that we've got points that are being sold that actually aren't, because I don't want to be running us out of water because the water saving measures that we've been trying to implement actually aren't functioning the way that they're supposed to be functioning.
Right, there is the issue of averages, I mean, if.
Absolutely.
That we have to worry about. And also, if Mr. Cliff has said pretty clearly, if we issue these letters, it's going to be several years before anybody is actually putting something in the ground. And during that period of time, we can change our policies or whatever, but we need to begin this project to expand a little bit about the RAC and the county. When they were reluctant to change our level of severity, we set this level of severity, but they have no mechanism to reduce a level of severity. They only had mechanisms to increase such a declaration. They just don't know how to do it. How do you say that the severity is less? Well, the actual data that we have, the 10 years of experience shows that what we forecasted to happen didn't happen. And so now I think we need to move forward.
Well, they have been directed to work with us to continue. In effect, their actions left the level as it was before. It didn't. We were in effect paired out, and the staff was directed to work with us to come to some conclusion. The problem in my discussions with staff is they have a hard time. They understand what their criteria is, and I think one of the supervisors, she expressed it very well, saying, you know, we ought to have a report that's true. And if you look at the numbers, Cambria isn't in the problem that they're in, and she recommended, you know, at least go to a 2, maybe to a 1. But that kind of got overridden to say, let's just carve it out, work with staff, and see what we can come up. And that's where we have to get across to staff that just because we have declared a 350 emergency does not necessarily mean that it's a level 3. And so they're going to be looking at their rules too about criteria, because right now their criteria says you're at or exceeding your usage, and they can't justify that by the numbers, but they can justify it by saying, well, you have a 350 emergency. That's the problem.
So, and if I could, that's part of where I think we will go next. Is some of these next issues will be next steps. But I was at that Board of Supervisors meeting also. And again, I go back to facts. To me, it was quite clear that they weren't prepared really, based again on any evidence or data, on why they wanted it level 3. It really was, well, perhaps, you know, if you were doing something, if you were looking at your water code emergency and you were exercising what we're doing here today of having some intent to serve letters actually issued, then that would be one step that they would then feel like would justify to them going back and revisiting our data. I was sitting right there, and it was extremely clear to me, because they are a biennial kind of issuance now, this with the level of water severity available, level 1, 2, and 3. And they were quite clear with us that they would come back and follow up with staff, and that they would accept, the Board of Supervisors would revisit that during this 2 years. They're not just going to leave it sit at level 3 for the next 2 years. So that was my impression.
So this is my question that I've been asking myself and trying to come to an answer that works for me and works for the community, which is, this is one of the biggest issues in Cambria, dealing with whether or not we issue more intent to serve letters. So it's possible, hopefully not, it's possible there could be a lawsuit. It's possible that there could be legal action taken that will cost us money. So I wanted to try and get a satisfactory answer to this question. Is this resolution, the resolution and findings that I would want to have to defend as a board member for the district? Is this something that I think is I could defend as a leader in the community and the decision maker, and I would like to know if you guys think that that's the case. My head's been trying to explode without being able to have discussion with anybody that's on the board about this until right now, which is why I'm taking the time right now and asking questions that maybe otherwise I might not, because I want to make sure that we're making the right decision and we have the right resolution that we're voting on.
I'm satisfied that we aren't implementing a program. We're taking the facts that exist. We're changing the specific rules of the 350 just to accommodate to provide services to a few additional people without increasing the amount of water we're using. We aren't We aren't adding new water, we're just we're respreading the water that we have among a few additional customers. It's pretty defensible as far as I'm
And-
Let
concerned.
me go to
Okay.
Mr. Gruber, Mr. Hirsch. Do you have a comment on this discussion?
I was only going to bring up the point when it was appropriate, and since you were still having a dialogue, I didn't want to interrupt. But the removal of that whereas clause relating to the economic impact also would suggest that you want to remove the finding B under the Water Code 353 findings in Section 1, which also pertains to the economy. That would be consistent then. And then just re-letter the finding C as the new letter, finding B.
I'll accept that friendly amendment. Oh, then the seconder. Would you accept that amendment?
Yes.
So it would be eliminating B. Under the findings 1B.
Right, on page 59, yeah.
Which relates to the economic issue.
Okay, all right. With that amendment, Mr. President?
Any further discussion?
Well, I think
Members?
I need to answer Mrs. question there, and that I am.
Turn your mic on.
Oh. I'm usually loudmouth enough that people hear me anyhow. Anyhow, I am comfortable. I am aware that we could be sued. We can be sued for anything, and I'm aware that we could be sued. But I am comfortable that all we are doing is exercising our legal authority to set rules under the 350. If we were doing away with the 350, it might be a much more problematic situation. But I still think that what we have to focus on here is that we have a legal authority to set some rules. Now, we've changed a rule, and we've made our rule match what the county and the Coastal Commission has already approved. So, yes, we could get sued, but it seems to me that all we are doing is matching our behavior and our actions to the actions that have already approved by both the county and the Coastal Commission, and I don't see that. I see that as that we're defensible as long as we follow that situation.
And if I just say one more thought on that, because I agree with you. I don't take anything lightly or frivolous, and I would not want to make a decision that I had not given a lot of consideration to, feel very, very comfortable that we are not putting the community at risk, because we're doing things the right way, a step at a time. We are looking at lots of things that have been said to us as a service district that we ought to do and have in place. So I think we're doing things right by doing the right thing.
Okay, the motion then before us is to consider adoption of the resolution 09-2013, approving the issuance of intent to serve letters on an interim basis while the district continues to pursue a long-term supplemental water supply project, and that is amended to strike the third whereas of the resolution, and also to strike the item, the finding number 1B related to the economic issue. Roll call? I will do a roll call. Director Rice?
Yes.
Director Berenger?
Yes.
Director Robinette?
Yes.
Director Clift?
Yes.
And I vote aye also. It passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Can we take a short break?
Short break?
Can we take a short break?
Okay, we have a request for a short break. Yeah, let's.
Yeah, take a little break.
Take a 5-minute break. Did they hear that on the?
upstairs. You know, to put a speaker in the bathrooms, you know, so that, in both of them, so we don't get it. Okay, Ms. Robinette will join us in a second. Yeah. If we can move forward with the agenda, we are at item 9B. Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, President Thompson and board members, staff, and members of the community that are still here. 9B is the mid-year budget adjustment. There is a great deal of information, a lot of information. The bottom line is this. What we budgeted for 2012, 2013 versus what we project for the or where we are right now and what we project for the end of the fiscal year is about $17,462. That's I hate to use the word deficit, but that's where we are with a over a $7 million budget. But as you look through the justification, starting on page 63, on why why we are over budget by $16,000. There's a lot of good definitions and a lot of good explanations of why we're over, especially relating to some of the maintenance that we've got done. The theme that I want to focus on within this budget is this, mid-year budget adjustment. We are over budget by about $17,000, but we have got an incredible amount of things done, and I'm really happy with that. Kind of my philosophy is that I don't want to keep deferring things. I rather come back to you at mid-year, and I rather come back to you at the end of this fiscal year and say, I'm over budget by X, Y, or Z, and this is the reasons, and I have something to show for it. With admin, for example, we have all new computers, not because I wanted to buy all new computers. We needed all new computers. Ours were starting to crash. We needed a new copier to continue operating the admin department. And wastewater, we needed key components of the infrastructure. Water, we needed to do the SR4 well, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's not frugalist spending. It's spending relating to getting things done and moving the organization forward. And so that's the theme, the details of the budget. I'm here to answer any questions. We've included on page, starting at 63, highlights, and it continues on to page 65. Then we get into the individual department budgets, revenues versus expenditures, and be more than happy to answer any questions. I also just texted Alan and brought him in. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the board.
Director Clift.
Well, I forgot to mention the Budget Committee and the important role that they played in this process. My apologies.
The Budget Committee did review. One question, though, in your proposed mid-year budget, with the retirement of the water supervisor and prior to any replacement, is that retirement figured in here, or was his salary included in this?
No, none of the retirement is not included in here. The information came too late.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is a cash out. When some organizations have a fund balance policy, they set money aside for that money. We pay as we go. This organization pays as they go when an individual retires or goes on to another organization. Whatever leave bank balance they have on the books, we pay it out. It's called uncompensated absences, and some districts and cities will set aside a very large amount of money. What Alan and I like to do is because of our leave bank policy is pretty rigid, and we don't have a lot of time on the books. We try to pay it out as we go and then absorb it into the budget. So to answer your question, no, it's not included in here, but there will be considerable savings relating to that at the end of the year in the budget that we year-end budget.
Thank you. Anyone else questions?
No, I think the Budget Committee did an excellent job, and I do, on page 64, just for a clarification, when we talk about other revenue, Conservation received unbudgeted reimbursement for prior year legal costs. Does that mean that we spent something last year and now we got it back?
That's exactly correct.
And the fire department's revenue is really because the chief's time is spent with the healthcare district and is getting reimbursed by them. Is that the issue?
Again, that's correct. To a lesser degree, some of Jerry's time has been reimbursed also.
Okay, so I have no further questions.
Okay, Director Rice, were you going to comment?
I'd just like some clarification on, was there any change to the resource conservation since we've got this water use efficiency? Have we changed the amount of money that's in there, or do we expect to be spending more or less, or?
Well, there's still, I'm not sure in what area you're asking. Yes, money will be spent or is expected to be spent through the end of the year. But as far as exactly in what regard, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Since there's a water use efficiency plan that I know we just approved it, but I didn't know if there were going to be expenditures of that $300,000 per year that they were estimating. If a quarter of that was expected to be spent in the final
No,
quarter.
that is not included.
But we did include, if I may, President Thompson, when the Water Conservation Committee did meet and the Budget Committee did meet, we did allocate additional monies for the retrofit for the remainder of the fiscal year. Is that correct, Alan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Robinette, are you?
No, I just wanted to.
Okay, well, you want to make the motion?
Yes, I would love to. I move that we approve the mid-year budget report as prepared and shared and submitted.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you very much. Moving to 9C. That is Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, President Thompson and board members. I have Monique Madrid here, the Administrative Services Officer, and if she could come up to the podium and just quickly address 9C, that would be great. That's what she's been waiting for patiently most of the afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, so I've been coughing, so if I start coughing, I'll have to stop talking. This is the consideration of the adoption of Ordinance 1/2013, amending subsection B of Section 8.04.110 of the CCSD Municipal Code relating to the Affordable Housing Program. This is what you asked us to bring back with the changes. And, excuse me. The changes is, the change is that it's recommended that the Board of Directors waive further reading, read by title only, and adopt Ordinance 1/2013, amending subsection B, thank you, of Section 8.04.110 of the CCSD Municipal Code relating to the Affordable Housing Program. Did you have questions, or?
Questions, discussion?
None? Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Actually, I do have one question. It was asked me last night at the NCAC meeting. We have accumulated, like, was it 8 per year?
6.
6 per year. The question that was asked to me, is there a legal mandate for us to consider 6 each year, or is there just simply a legal mandate for us to consider? And I didn't have the answer whether, I know the board in our code has said the 6, but is there a state or a?
No.
Okay, that was the only question.
North Coast, I think there is in the North Coast area plan, I was just doing a search. I think there's something that we have to have a program that allows for affordable housing as a priority from the Coastal Commission as a priority for when we issue intent to serve.
I would expect that's because the North Coast Area Plan is part of the general plan for the county, and the county has certain obligations they're trying to meet when it comes to the statewide program that allocates, but there's no numerical requirement that's imposed by us that
yeah,
on this-
I had it,
that
yeah.
I'm aware of.
So it's really a statement of philosophy that everybody should take some of the deal. Okay, that's fine. I just needed to be able to answer the question to the individual.
All right, do we have a motion on this item?
Yes. I move that we adopt ordinance 01-2013, amending subsection B of section.
Excuse me.
Am I on the right one?
We will need a motion first to waive further reading and read
Oh,
by
okay.
title
Let's-
only. And if
okay.
I may, I'll read by title only, just to get that out of the way. Ordinance amending subsection B of section 8.04.110 of the CCSD Municipal Code relating to the Affordable Housing Program.
And I move that we approve that.
And we do have one public speaker,
okay.
President Thompson, I'm sorry.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Oh, okay.
all right. Yeah.
Well, let's hear from the public on this item.
Yes, it's nice to see you, Laurel. You've been waiting so patiently.
We go. Laurel Stewart here. How have you determined that this exceeds the needs for affordable housing? It's in there. It's in the language. I don't.
That it exceeds the need?
Right.
Well, if you would make your statement, then we'll
Because,
answer the question.
because, for instance, the self-help housing project that has come up for consideration on Schoolhouse Lane,
Yeah, but
the man from
could-
self-help housing himself said that the list far exceeds the number of units that might be built there, and it also far exceeds the 56 that are mentioned in your resolution to amend the ordinance. So how have you determined that the units being reserved far exceeds the need for affordable housing?
I think I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
Laurel. He has said that here before, too. He looks, I believe what he's basing that on is the areas in Cambria that would have parcels that would actually be qualified to have, you know, like multi...
70-some?
70-some.
Right.
And so he feels that there aren't that many other open space parcels that are owned by maybe a singular landowner, or even just the size, the location. He feels that we might have one other affordable housing project, maybe one, but he does, I know what you're talking about. He
Perhaps the
would-
language is incorrect, the need for affordable housing. Or the viability might be a better word
Or the
there.
demand for,
Or
we
the-
haven't had anybody apply for affordable housing really, except for the people's self-help. So that's why we've accumulated so many. Nobody, we were affording that there would be 6 people a year that would
But
come and
we're-
ask for
Yeah,
it,
you
right?
We're
you had
talking
two that
about
were-
physical location.
Right.
We're talking about properties.
There isn't enough
of
available property to be able to construct them if they did so. And even so, with this resolution, we would review it if all of a sudden some parcel was rezoned, we could then address the issue.
Does it have
This
to
isn't
be
keeping us
zoned
from doing anything.
affordable?
What is the acreage? What are the
I don't, does it have
sizes
to be
of
zone
parcels, et cetera?
affordable?
Do you have all of that and have?
You could just build it on a regular residential lot, right?
Probably
I
could.
mean, if you're not doing multifamily.
Correct. In fact, 2 of there were 2 approved for Habitat for Humanity.
Right.
With that, they gave, those were on individual lots. They gave those up to people's self-help.
My understanding was that the reason why we were changing it from 6 a year was they were just accumulating because nobody was asking for them, but it
Right.
doesn't preclude us from providing additional intent to
I
serve
do think the
letters for
wording in your
affordable.
resolution is incorrect, however, to say that because when you look at the waiting list of 170-some for 40 units, you know, you can't say that in that resolution and be speaking the
Accurate.
truth.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel.
I think that is a good point. And the third one, I mean, if you look at the last sentence of the third whereas, it says, which are more units than necessary to meet the needs of affordable housing projects. I think it is the demand for letters of intent to serve for affordable housing projects.
Unfortunately, if we start to change any of the words, we have to reintroduce the ordinance
And
and then
which-
adopt it at the next meeting.
Which would just put us back a month and would cost us what?
Wouldn't cost anything.
But it would
at
be,
the time.
but it would be more accurate. I would support doing that unless I mean, I support doing that whether the board thinks it should be done or not. That's my position.
Well, I think the intent is that it's more than what's needed to meet the needs of the projects that have applied. I mean, it's, obviously, there's a need for affordable housing, and whatever the number is, 170 or probably more than that. I mean, it's
She is correct in that, though that the way you would read this is more units than are necessary to meet the.
Okay,
Well,
could
yeah,
we?
let's do this.
Could we get
let's-
by with just changing the word needs to
Can't
demand?
change it. Can't change any words
One
because
word?
we've already.
Not even one word. Okay, I said we.
Can we bring it
Let's
back?
let's table this.
Table
I
it.
don't
Let's
think there's
table it.
any great need,
Well,
and
what the board can do is simply reintroduce the ordinance with the change that they want to make. So if you
And
articulate.
then approve
them,
it next.
Then it will come back at the next meeting for adoption.
Okay, could we just change the word needs to demand?
No.
Which is more units?
I think you just, which are just just say we have an accumulation of 56 units,
Period. I like it.
period.
Third whereas.
Third whereases aren't doing real well tonight.
The last phrase, which are more units than necessary to meet the needs, strike that from which to the end of that phrase.
so-
Yes?
So again, just perhaps a motion to direct that be stricken and reintroduce the ordinance with that
I so
change.
move.
I'll second it.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to strike the last part of that sentence, beginning with which are more units on the third whereas, and reintroduce the motion at the next meeting.
Reintroduce we can reintroduce it today, correct?
Okay,
Okay.
so be it. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is approved.
Thank you,
Now,
Jim.
Director Robinette, you wanted to go to introduce, or to move the reintroduced motion.
I did. No, I mean,
Yes.
no, I know. So, does that come back now
It would-
next time?
Right, it'll come back at the next meeting.
So I'll
as
have to wait,
modified
right?
To be adopted.
Okay.
I'll
So-
wait.
Then we'll
So,
adopt
so really, the motion
Okay.
in action is to reintroduce it, is to reintroduce the ordinance with that change.
And I'll be ready.
And so that you did.
So that we do.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurel.
Moving to 9D, General Manager.
Thank you, President Thompson and board members. 9D is consideration of ordinance 02-2013, amending section 8.04.110 of the Cambria Community Services Municipal Code to prohibit transfers that would result in multiple positions on a parcel. Just a really quick FYI, we did meet with the realtors this morning and discuss with them this item in addition to releasing meters, so they were informed about what happened. So with that, I'll turn it over to Monique again, the Administrative Services Officer, and ask her just to briefly present this to the board and explain why we're doing this.
Thank you. Yes, this was the item that we discussed in the January meeting, I believe it was. And you had asked about how we had multiple positions on an individual parcel, where we had an improved parcel with a waitlist position on it, for example. So I believe it was the wish of the board to bring it back to prohibit that from happening in the future. So that's what this is.
Discussion?
So in effect, what was happening is somebody might buy a position and put it on the property they have rather than a vacant property.
Correct.
Okay.
As a question, this obviously happened, but is it a common thing? And/or are there outstanding people that have them on there and we haven't addressed them?
We have somewhere between, I would say, 5 and 10.
What will we do if tomorrow, if we adopt this, what's the effect on those 5 to 10 people?
There's no effect on them.
No effect on them, it's future.
Oh, future.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's future, and I talked to you a bit about this too. How did this happen? How could this have happened? And it seems that the code didn't prevent it. It didn't encourage it. It didn't say it's fine, come on in. But it also didn't say you couldn't. And so now we're cleaning it up so that it certainly and obviously wouldn't occur again.
Okay.
And it doesn't do anything for the ones that are already in that situation?
Correct.
Because because, and I know I asked that too. Apparently it's because it didn't say you can't, didn't say you could.
We
So
can't
that's-
do something affirmative to encourage or, make sure that they correct that so that it is in line with this new
I think the people,
ordinance?
the individuals, and I don't know who they are, that hold 2 or 3 on a parcel, I don't know. They were allowed to do it, so I think it would be difficult to say,
Can we
surrender
unallow
those
them?
numbers
No.
right now.
Why would you want to do it? Why don't you just keep the
Well,
lower one? And
Well, I think sometimes people bought something and then needed to park the meter because they didn't, they might have donated a lot, they might have done some other things, but they parked the meter because they didn't want to buy another lot yet. And they're just looking for a parking place for that meter. And I know of one case that was allowed.
I think I have very strong feelings that is so not the right thing to do.
Right.
But again, in reviewing it, we didn't seem to have a code that was stated that this is not to happen.
I'm not sure that all cases were the nefarious speculator who was
Right.
putting things, I have and I don't know the exact, I don't recall totally the exact circumstances, but I think when they were accumulating lots and things for the
Build out
area
reduction?
up on, in.
Special projects area?
No, Kingston Bay?
Up near the fire station, where those 18 lots or things up in there. It seemed to me one of those had a meter and was allowed to be parked, and they were being given away, type of a thing. So I think it was for the best of reasons, but it should have been limited some way to say you got to move it to an actual,
So you were saying 5 to 10 people, but is it a lot more meters? In other words, each person has multiple, I mean, is it 40 of these things?
Are
or-
they in the 600 number?
Yes, yes. I think there's a couple of things that'll happen. One, it'll correct itself when somebody wants to build one of those waitlist positions. They'll have to move it to a property that they can build on, first of all. And second, the only scenario that I can recall that comes to mind is some people had an improved parcel and they owned the parcel next door, and they had a waitlist position on it. They wanted to remodel their house, so the county requires that you merge your parcels in order to do that. They didn't want to move their waitlist position at that time and purchase another property. They wanted to be able to sell it at a later date. So the assertion was made that we couldn't prohibit them from doing that, and so at that time, it was allowed.
If you consolidate your lots under the way it is now, you would have to go buy another lot and move that meter.
Starting
And
if we
incur-
adopt this.
Yeah, and incur that particular cost, and here they're saying, well, I'll just leave it on here and so I can sell it.
Do we have to grandfather the ones that are currently, I'm just asking.
I think you certainly open up a can of worms, I assume those property
Oh,
owners.
can of worms? Yay.
I assume those property owners will assert that they
I'm not
have
afraid
some-
of cans of worms if they're important for the community.
They have a property interest or a property right that's being affected and so on.
Yeah, I think,
Well, I think it's awkward at the least.
Can we write them a letter and say, please, would you comply with our new ordinance?
I move that we,
General-
oh, he's already done that.
Just real quick, the reason we bring things like this to the board is we find that it takes a lot of staff time. And so when we bring ordinances to the board that we want to amend or correct, so we don't have to spend a lot of staff time, we don't have to engage in back and forth dialogues with these 5 and 10 people that cost staff time, that we don't have to use legal costs. So it's just house cleaning mostly on our part. And we'll
Well,
continue to bring things back like this
But
to you.
it should be our policy anyhow,
Yeah.
not to allow.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
it's
we'll
not,
find some- yeah.
it's not possible, I guess, because it is true, they're kind of like parked there. Is it legally possible we could contact the owners of these multiple numbers on these single lots and say that actually we'd really like for you to find other lots and move them out?
But I don't think we can apply this
I think all we can
retroactively.
do is correct the future
I'd like
and
to-
live with it.
I'd like to move that we waive further reading and read by title only and introduce ordinance 2-2013, amending section 8.04.100 of the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code to prohibit transfers that would result in multiple positions on a parcel.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you very much. Mr. Gruber, number 9E.
Thank you. This item, President Thompson and board members, item 9E is discussion and consideration to adopt Resolution 10-2013, nominating Director Merle Clift as the candidate for election to the Special District's Risk Management Authority Board of Directors.
Did you skip that?
No, 9E. Do we know anything about this guy, or is it?
Yeah. What do we know? What do we know about this?
I move that we nominate Director Clift as a candidate for the election to the SDRMA Board of Directors.
I second.
Any further discussion?
Merle will do a good job for us, I'm sure.
Moved and seconded to nominate Director Clift as a candidate for election. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion is approved.
I'm going to vote aye.
We're glad.
One can vote for oneself, I guess. In this case.
Okay.
I appreciate it, thank you.
9F, Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, Board President, President Thompson, and board members. 9F is discussion and consideration to nominate a special district member for California Special District Association, CSDA, Region 4, Seat B. The recommendation is consider nomination to the CSDA Association Region 4 representative. So if there are people that are currently, well, let me read it real quick. CCSD received notice of a nomination for CSD board members, directors of 2013 election. The leadership of the CSDA is elected from 6 geographical regions. Each of the 6 regions has 3 seats of the board and is staggered a 3-year term. With that,
Anybody else interested, or?
I think Amanda, Director Rice, has expressed an interest, and I think to the extent that we can be represented on these state boards, brings a lot of information to our district, and I would like to move that we nominate Director Rice for position on the CSDA Region 4 board.
I'd be proud-
for Region 4 position on the board.
I'd be proud to second that motion.
Can we, are you interested, Ms. Rice?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I think it's certainly appropriate. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, just for clarification, this is a nomination, and now she will be on a ballot.
Now she's got to run for.
Fill out paperwork and run for that.
Another election? Is that what we're talking?
I'm so excited. It's
You've got
months.
experience with this.
Okay. All those in favor of nominating Director Amanda Rice for the CSDA Region 4 representative signify by an aye.
Aye.
A rousing affirmation of support. That was quite harmonious. 9G, and I'll just comment briefly on this item. Discussion and consideration to establish an ad hoc committee to recommend the structure of an outreach committee, and this is something that Director Robinette has fostered from a germ of an idea, and what this would be the establishment of an ad hoc committee to basically develop the framework for that then standing committee. Then she would come back, I also suggested that we have an older member, and the district clerk suggested I use the term seasoned, so.
Seasoned.
So Director Clift is well-seasoned, and so I'm also suggesting that he be the other part of that ad hoc committee, which would then come back next month to give us their recommendation in terms of how that committee might function. Any discussion on this?
I would like to have a little discussion at this point in time, and maybe Director Robinette can expand on her perceptions of what this committee could do, because I have concerns that some committees, and I saw the frustration last night at NCAC, where sometimes it's not clearly defined what we expect out of a committee, whether it's an advisory committee, whether it's someone we will kind of test the waters with. Is it kind of like a focus? Is it a focus group, or is it a advisory committee and things like that? So I would like at least to have you discuss what your concepts are, so that other board members, if they want to make some input at this point in time before we start talking about it.
Okay. What I'm really trying to accomplish is what I really called it. It's an outreach, hopefully, that is kind of reflects our community. It's a committee that's balanced in terms of our different demographics here in Cambria, if possible. We can do that. I think that would be the next step, that first we move forward and we come back with some recommendations on how it might be. My initial thoughts are that certainly each of us, if it gets too large and wieldy, then it just gets chaotic. Is it advisory? It's really more a consensus kind of group where when there are particular things coming before the board, that we would just like to feel comfortable that we're including as many stakeholders as we can hear from, that's reasonable, that we would have, maybe this committee would be where that we each appoint one person for sure, and then we perhaps have 2 or 3 others that we can also nominate, and then let the ad hoc committee look at this idea of, how are we as far as representing the community, but still have everyone ultimately on this board have 2 people nominated and appointed that you have identified.
2? Each board member has 2?
Yeah, so it'd be a committee of 10.
Wow.
Yeah, no larger than that. I think that'd be too large.
I think the example that comes to mind is about 2 of them. One the build-out reduction committee of several years back, and another would it be the committee that was developed to consider the acquisition or the acquisition of the lots in, was it Strawberry Canyon?
It was the land use. It was the
Land
San Luis Obispo land use.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there was that was a good cross-section of folks that met and discussed the pros and cons of the acquisition, and gave good input to the board at that time. I think, Merle, you were the only person that was on the board at that time, but I thought that was a good example of a citizens, of a committee for citizen input.
I'll go out on a limb, and because I haven't thought about this very much. This is the first time we're trying to give some guidance to that ad hoc committee. But I gotta say, I'd be opposed to having an NCAC-like advisory committee where the public goes directly to that committee and now tries to do something.
I absolutely agree.
I would
I
think
do
that
not see it that way at all.
if we, although advisory in nature is excellent, but if we can get some key members of the community to study a given task, for instance, how we handle the water wait list or another task, and if they're task-oriented and the board directs them to go do something and they come back a month or two later, we might go back to that same group again because they're citizens that have done a great job, but they should be task-oriented as opposed to.
It is, that's exactly the way I kind of envision it, that it is certain tasks that we're interested in a broader-based opinion from our community, and opinion is a key word. It is, yeah, I don't want this to become something where, I know what you're saying about, it's not an NCAC-like, it's just an outreach where we do hear more thoughts and opinions that do come and are shared through that committee. What I'm hoping is that they'll, when we have a particular task, that they'll get out and talk to a lot of other people that they know, but bring those opinions or consensus of what they're hearing to the meeting, and then let this committee just come and share what they've been hearing.
The Los Osos CSD, which has its share of fun, does have two standing committees. If you go on their website, you can see that one of them's finance and one of them's utilities and one's finance. And people, to get onto I spoke to a couple of people who are familiar with the process in Los Osos, and what they do is the staff report first goes to their standing committee, say if it's the budget, goes to the standing committee. It ends up delaying action by about a month because it goes to the standing committee first to get a really thorough review, and then they make a report to the board about it so that there's an idea about what's going on. Now, they've had some instability in their general manager position, so we have staff that we have a fair amount of stability in the base of knowledge there, but I think that and to get onto those, they have people apply, people who would like to be a part of those that are volunteer, and they apply to be on them, and they're selected to be on them for a term of, I don't know, whatever, a year or two. But I would like to see something that it was something that not necessarily you had to know a board member to get on. I would like to see an open application process, because there's some people that might be interested, but they don't know a board member, don't know, don't necessarily. It would be, I mean, I would have never joined the NCAC if they hadn't put an ad in the newspaper, because I didn't know anybody that was involved in it, and so it's just a thought.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, if I were to have say on who would be on this committee, I'm sure I would do it through an application process, or people that would be interested. So there's kind of an application process there that could be easy to find a few people. I think the value would be to have people, if I were a director and I was selecting somebody, to have a cross-section of people. And I think sometimes we have issues that are being dealt with by very smart and capable people, but they all have an opinion before they even started. So if you have a diverse group, and I also think that if there's a standing committee, that there should be at least one director that's at the meeting itself.
Always. I think that is such a key, that this is a balanced committee, that it does reflect the diverse population, and so we'll have to see on applications, if we go that route, what if we have some glaring vacancies? And so then we have to decide, so how do we go forward with that? So I think what we're starting here, if we do this, and we don't have to do it, it's just that I had as one of my goals, and in fact during my campaign said I wanted to try to find other ways to get more access to our citizens and know what they're thinking on various things that we are considering. So.
And basically, again, what the action today provides for is that that the ad hoc committee will come back with recommendations in terms of how this is going to happen, if at all. Again,
if at all, we may
But
think
I am hearing some indication of task-oriented committees rather than a general
Absolutely. We would pick what's coming up. That was since it was my goal and that was my picture, that as we have things coming up that are rather significant, not that all of what we do isn't significant, but that we would want to hear from a broader outreach.
Yeah, and one of the other suggestions in terms of composition was that perhaps each director appoint one person, and then that the board as a whole filled in the other 5 to make sure that we had a good representation of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry McKinnon, sir, you have a comment on this item, or several.
Jerry McKinnon, Cambria.
Wearing your Legion hat.
I look upon this as a duplication of services. There are how many departments in the budget? And each one of those departments is something that you oversee. If something comes up, then it probably would go through one of those departments. And the department has a responsibility for that particular issue. If it's Parks and Recreation that is a concern, then let Parks and Recreation people give you their suggestions. But for an outside group to come in and override the responsibility of that particular department seems like to me a duplication of services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon.
If I could comment on this.
Please.
It's a good discussion we're having here, because I am seeing this as what I hear often, and I would think other members of the board hear this. People don't know what we're up to and what we're involved or what we're considering. And so what I'm trying to do is have an open door. I can remember on a particular issue last year, we had a couple of folks say consistently, well, how do we ever get to the table? How do we ever get to be heard? And that's what we're trying to do, is have our fellow Cambrians have some representation on opinion. But I have to be very clear, I didn't mean for this to be something where they're, going to be giving recommendations, actually having that kind of thing. I'm just trying to have people included.
I agree. That said, I move that we establish an ad hoc committee of Director Cliff and Director Robinette to report back to the board in next month.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is approved, and we look forward to hearing your report at the next meeting. Okay, we have reached the end of our agenda. Only 4 hours today. That's not bad. Thank you all for attending. That's left. And we have no closed session, and we stand adjourned.